Hey, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the VIS League, bringing you guys the VIS Challengers as we get underway in split number 1. And starting off today, it is going to be group number B, as we are jumping right into the summer season, and the Challengers have really intensified. There have been a lot of crazy matchups. We just concluded group A yesterday, and now on to group B we go. Joining me today, it is the Nominee, and it is, of course, Tasty Bacon. Guys, we had, a really exciting time yesterday, but this Group B is a lot of other exciting matchups to keep an eye on, and we're getting right into the thick of it. Let's take a little bit, though, to talk about what we've got here on Group B's bracket. What are some of the key matchups you see? Start with you, Tasty. What are some teams that stand out to you?
Well, yesterday, after getting to see Immortals come out of the gates swinging and absolutely dominate their other opponents, I think the other former Vainglory teams are really going to have to step up today that didn't get a chance to play yesterday. So, Tribe, I think, is going to be one of the teams that is really going to be looking to show what they have for this in the start of this Challengers with their new look lineup that they've brought out onto the table.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be getting into that game. Actually, that'll be our first stream matchup today. Rogue, there's a team. They dropped down from Vainglory 8. Let's talk a little bit about them, and maybe Day, you have some thoughts on this roster, because Rogue has made some small changes, but they still have some of the core pieces. We saw them struggle in VG8, but they were tied for the most points in VG8. Is this a team that is probably going to be okay here in Challengers, or are they going to have their work cut out for them?
Well, if I remember correctly, I think Rogue had a pretty recent pickup of Pon the Original. So I think that's a massive pickup for them. Pon has a lot of time that he really played with Immortals, and really, granted, he doesn't have as much roster success because he hasn't seen as much time. He does compete really well at the top level, and he specializes in a lot of picks that are typically considered to be off meta. So, for example, I know personally that he has a incredible Rhyme, and Rhyme is just not somebody that we typically see. And we've seen him in the past bring it into heroes that typically most would consider to be a counter to a Rhyme. A Sky, Kestrel, these ranged heroes that normally make it really difficult for Rhyme, and he just plays it so well that it doesn't seem to matter.
You're absolutely right. He has a very unique skill set and a very unique hero pool, so I'm really excited to see how that matchup goes. One of the teams for me that's been here in the Challengers a lot, we actually see Chubby Bunnies coming back, of course, with a very different roster than when Chubby Bunnies first landed, but there's a lot of core players there. That roster is actually pretty strong. It's seeded at number 10. And we talked about yesterday, 1 through 10, those are very strong teams. Another matchup that we will probably get a chance to see is the winner of the Ardent versus Excellent era, Ardent Esports, back into this as well, doing really, really well, looking to make a big name for themselves again. And they're seeded number 6. Going up against potentially the winner of Enforcers Chaos Elite, potentially Enforcers at seed 11. Enforcers is another roster that has been coming in the Challengers and performing really well as well. So that's actually likely to be our last matchup tonight if those two teams do make it onto the next round.
Absolutely, and they, just like yesterday, there's a lot of games that I see today. I think first round we're not going to see too many upsets. It just doesn't. To me, it doesn't make sense with the teams that we have. We have a lot of powerhouse teams that are really going to be pushing for that, Challenger battle spot.
Mm-hmm.
We could still see an upset. I don't want to rule anybody out, but I think coming into the second round when we see the teams progress, I think the competition is going to step up greatly from there, and that's when we're really going to get the chance to see, what this half of the split has to bring. And then, as we get closer to playoffs, we're going to really be narrowed down to some really high-tier competitive gameplay from the two brackets.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about our matchup that we have coming in here today. The one that we are going to be streaming first, Tribe Gaming versus Shank and Suppress. And this is a team that has made its way into the Challengers multiple seasons. Shank and Suppress, though, not making it very far. They are there at the lower end of the bracket at 30 seed. And, I'm not suspecting this to be a lot like Europe. We did see Europe, a 30 seed, kind of come out and surprise. But Tribe Gaming, honestly, look at the roster. I mean, they added Mixi, and we actually saw him play in VIS Pro, and he played really well. And we actually saw him play live on stage during the run of the gauntlet against Armada, and they played really well there too. So Mixi, it might be the fit he's been looking for. We saw Lone Delphi join Nova and take that roster to the next level. Can Mixi do that for Tribe?
I definitely think that Mixi has the skill potential to do that. It's a huge pickup for them. You know, Mixi was one of the players that was in the initial lineup of Team Solo Mid, and has had great success in tournaments in the past. Including the VIPL back when that was a thing. So he brings a lot of experience in both time and just sheer level of play. So I think that Tribe Gaming roster, especially with Status, Status is another one of those.
You can't go wrong with him on your team.
Right, and especially we have a little bit of history with a lot of this team as well. We have Status, we have Marto, we have E36. So, they alone, were part of the team that won the first live final event. And then we bring in Mixi, who is a world-class laner as well, very flexible, can either lane or jungle. Huge hero pool. This is going to be a huge roster to watch.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And they had the potential to go all the way. Obviously, they're looking to put their mark on it. I think it was really a heartbreaker that they lost in challenge battles. Just weren't prepared for it and falling short. So we'll have to see how that plays out this season here in the Summer Split 1. We are going to take a quick break as we wait for everyone to get on for this matchup. So we're going to quickly go to a quick advertisement. When we come back, though, game number 1 between Tribe Gaming and Shank and Suppress will be underway. We'll see you guys all in a few.
Ben, Sam, and Ken are on separate journeys to defeat the menacing Vile Dragon. But let's just say luck isn't on their side. If only there was a way for them to find each other and band together. Well, that's why there's Band. It's a mobile app that allows people to come together using common interests. With Band, you can find fellow gamers, chat, schedule gaming sessions, and conduct polls. Stage epic battles with friends while sharing videos and photos along the way. So try Band today. Band. Be together.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are getting ready for game number 1 between Tribe Gaming and Shank and Suppress. Everybody, you are watching the VIS Challenger Series here, Split 1, starting off the summer season. I'm your host, Dragonborn, and we're actually just waiting for 1 or 2 more players to get on, but while we wait, we could start talking a little bit about what we expect to see coming in here tonight and all the matches. We are going to be bringing you guys at least 3 full series. Starting off with, we are in the round of 32, and so we're in Group B, which there's the 16 teams from Group B that are playing today. All of them are actually hitting the fold right now, and those games are underway. But this matchup, Tribe, now, we were talking about it before. A lot of these teams that came from VG8, they're obviously really strong teams. Some of them have made massive improvements to the rosters like Immortals. Some of them making minor improvements like Rogue. The Mixie pickup, and we were talking about it earlier, Donomine, it's really hard to gauge yet, right? Like, we did see a kind of a laner that was, upon the original, very good laner, a good jungler as well. He's moved out of that position onto other teams, and Mixie comes in to be a dedicated laner. This kind of allows Status Bake to, I feel, it almost opens it up to allow him to be more aggressive in the jungle, knowing that he has someone who may not be making huge plays, but will definitely be getting the lane, the farm, keeping things even, and holding his own.
Indeed, and it's one thing that we can't gauge it too much until we really see what's going on. Just because you can take the 3, what you would consider to be the best players in North America, you could take the best captain, take the best laner, take the best jungler. They might not play well together. They just might not have the synergy there. So I can see, based on history, this team being incredibly strong, but we won't really know until we see how they function together in the game.
No, absolutely. Well, we may not be able to see it, unfortunately, as we did just get word that one of the teams not able to play today, and that's really unfortunate. So, Tribe, by default, is going to be moving on. Shake and Suppress not able to show up. And so, with that unfortunate loss, they do move down to the loser round, but it looks like they don't have the roster to play today, so that's really unfortunate. Moving on, Tribe Gaming is gonna get the win, move on to the next round. So now we got to see if we can jump into another match. We'll hopefully look around and see if there is another one that we can jump right into here. Otherwise, we're gonna have to go on a quick break. And wait until one of those opens up. So kind of heartbroken for that. Holy crap! Team Swishers already 2-0'd Frosty Slayers. Is that right? That is oddly fast.
Surrender or something?
Oh, it might be another surrender, yeah. We had no surrenders yesterday, to my knowledge. At least I wasn't aware of any, which is pretty surprising for VIS League. Granted, we're down to 32 teams, not 64, so the disparity between skill tier is drastically reduced. And we saw that actually even yesterday. A lot of teams of lower seeds holding their own. Alright, let's take a quick look and see if we can get into another game here. Unfortunately, what that means is we're going to have to go on break until we can get that all up and running, so that way we can bring you guys the highest quality match that we can get into here in just a few moments. I don't know if there's any ones that you see that you really... Which one would you like to get into, Day? I mean, they probably all started already, but we might be able to jump into a game number 2.
Into game number 2, yeah. I would say the next most exciting roster to look at would probably be a Rogue versus Luminosity. An Ardent Esports versus the Excellent Era. That ought to be a pretty exciting matchup. And then I don't want to count out Team Enforcers versus Chaos Elite. These rosters may be looked over a little bit, but we do have some big names as far as the ranked scene goes on these teams. So I don't want to count that one out as being a close game.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard seeding-wise. There's some of these are really close, but even some of the teams that have a little disparity in seeding, they can still be very close. Like, a good example would be Chubby Bunnies versus Team Genesis. I mean, depending on how strong Chubby Bunnies is, that game could be pretty close. I think Team Enforcers versus Chaos Elite, though, is definitely one Team Enforcers can pick up. So we're all right, we're gonna take a quick break then, everybody, and we're gonna go and see if we can get into another game. So don't go anywhere. We will be back hopefully really soon. So we'll hopefully be able to bring you guys some action just a little bit. We'll be right back, everyone. Hey everybody, welcome back here after a decently long wait, and we do apologize for the delay. Really just trying to find another match. We did find one, as you guys saw right before we jumped here live. It's going to be Chubby Bunnies versus Team Genesis, and it's going to be, I think, a fun match. We were saying today, it could be really fun. I mean, Chubby Bunnies is actually some of the players from the old Enforcers roster, plus Trinomial, who's been on a few competitive rosters. Definitely a player to actually watch. As he's kind of risen up through the ranks. One of those kind of sleeper players. And we're going to be getting into it, though, in just a few seconds as we jump into the ban. So, any thoughts on this day or Tasty right before we go in?
I definitely think that this is going to be one of the closer matchups that we see in the round, the first round at least, just because, yes, you look, it's a 10 and a 23 seed, but these teams are pretty hard to judge because, yes, these players have been in the Challenger Series before, but have jumped around a couple rosters for some of them, so it's really hard to gauge what seed they really are. So I think this is going to be probably one of the best matchups that we can watch, one of the closest games. Yeah, hopefully, and we're going to be able to get into it right now, so your waiting has paid off, everybody. The game number 1 is going to be Chubby Bunnies versus Team Genesis. Chubby Bunnies is up 1-0. This is game number 2. And they're looking to go in there. Not surprised that we do see that Grumpjaw Baron ban right to start. I mean, that's not anything we should be too surprised about. And a VIS first pick comes out, and that's one of these heroes that for the past couple patches we've seen really start to excel with the changes to attack speed. The introduction of Poison Shiv being a really strong item in the meta right now, and we see a Ringo and a Lance pick up into this VIS. And the Lance, to me, is a little questionable. VIS has a lot of mobility. He can really get out of the way of that route pretty easily if he's paying attention. But I do like the Ringo. Ringo, overall, throughout the game, duels out VIS very well. However, he's not quite as mobile and as susceptible, especially with this Catherine pickup, who's going to be able to lock Ringo down pretty easily. Yeah, I do like that support pickup play, and Ringo, we saw it come out yesterday. It wasn't very successful, although we are talking about different skill tier teams. This time, Chubby Bunnies is the higher C team playing that Ringo. Koshka, Catherine Koshka is great. A very aggressive lockdown comp. Early game, you've got stuns, and you've got a lot of damage coming out of the Koshka. If played well, they could definitely put some hurting onto, depending on who they go into the jungle. Oh, a Baptiste. Definitely, I actually love this pick into a Koshka because it can really make the Koshka pay for being a little too over-aggressive. Koshka's real strength is her disengage ability, which we could see Baptiste really shut down. Yeah, and I actually really like the way this draft turned out for the side of Chubby Bunnies. I really like the Lance into the Koshka. We were discussing maybe into the VIS it's not so good, but Koshka really has to stick, and Lance makes it incredibly difficult for her to do so, as well as the fact that we now have this Baptiste who's going to be able to restrict her movement, prevent her from getting to the Ringo, and that's going to really allow Ringo to start ramping up damage. We'll probably see a Tension Bow, Sorrow Blade, Breaking Point build out of Ringo because it's very directional target damage, so it ramps up really quickly. So if Koshka goes in a little too soon, she's really going to be punished by this composition that Chubby Bunnies has together.
Alright guys, well, we're into the game. Game number 2. Team Genesis looking to get on A side and maybe find some momentum. Kicking over to Tasty Bacon, Denominate to cast these games as we get right into it.
All right, thank you very much, Dragonborn. I am Tasty Bacon. Alongside me is Denominate, and we are underway for this second game of the best of 3. Chubby Bunny's going to be starting off with a Biggs Impale onto, I'm just going to say Dwagzer. I'm not going to bother with the RNS. That is going to be a lot of damage onto that Catherine in the early goings. And I have to agree with you, Denominate. I really like this Baptiste pick. I think there's going to be a lot of potential for some massive lockdown and also some huge damages. Wags are going to get stuck up in that Ordained for a moment, is able to survive, avoided getting stunned off of it. So that'll be nice, but this does give an opportunity to low-fat yogurt to clear out the Ancient Treant and maybe try and find something from the opponent's jungle, as these camps are just starting to respawn, but it's going to be Trinomial and low-fat yogurt meeting each other.
Yeah, and we do see that Trinomial has got a chance to buy. He does have some shield, and when combined with his Reap heroic perk, where he's going to gain that health back, he should be able to fare his own against this Koshka despite Koshka's early game aggression. And there we see it right there. Huge bursts of damage from Trinomial.
The kill actually goes over. Nova Fusion walked down, laid out one basic attack, and stole the kill away from Trinomial for the first blood. So not exactly ideal.
They want that fountain. They want the fountain.
Yeah, not exactly an ideal situation there, but a kill is a kill, so they're going to be happy to have that first blood on their side.
Indeed, and we've already seen I Want to Be the Best recall. So that's, he missed out on a couple of the lane wave here. He is down 13 to 23 for this Ringo. Ringo is going to have a chance to go back and buy now. Not enough gold to really complete a tier 3. I would have liked to see him stay, get enough gold for that tension bow, then take the opportunity to back, because that's a really surprising spike when you come back to lane after your first shop with that tension bow. And tension bow is such a huge item this patch just due to the pierce that's on the item.
Yeah, 12% pierce on the tension bow, and the extra little burst damage, especially early on, definitely helps as well. They're going to be going in onto Dwagzer again, getting some good damage down. With that Yogurt not able to respond, even though they were up here in the lane. This is just Chubby Bunnies with taking small advantages in each of these trades. Nova Fusion's not going to land that Impale, and now they're going to be moving as a unit down onto Trinomial, but the rest of Chubby Bunnies are here as well, and it looks like they're going to be the ones coming out on top of this. They find the kill, and another Impale is not going to connect, and that should allow both I Want to Be the Best and Low Fat Yogurt to get out of here. But Low Fat Yogurt going aggressive, trying to get onto Evader, is not going to find the kill, and is now going to be in a very risky situation. But it doesn't look like Trinomial or Nova Fusion will be able to find that Koshka.
And, they're definitely hunting him down, burning a lot of his time. We've seen him stop to try to recall a couple times. And then just as the enemy starts getting close, he's had to cancel the recall. Now he's walking all the way to his backs. Hasn't had a chance to spend this 1,500 gold in his pocket. That's a lot of time wasted and a lot of gold sitting in your pocket. That's going to be really dangerous if you engage and have, 2,000 gold. That's a potential aftershock sitting in the pocket of Low Fat Yogurt right now.
Yeah, but because the jungle did just intensify, they will be able to clear those backs, then just duck down into the shop and spend it. So,
yeah, if Trinomial doesn't see him, though, that's the aftershock. But he does get caught up with the CC, and that is one dead kitty cat.
Yeah, very, very dead Koshka. Now going to lose out on this mid-treant as well. Chubby Bunny is just playing very aggressively, finding these opportunities, finding these kills, and taking advantages.
Yeah, and this really attributes again to huge damage coming out on this Vox. Ringo finds the kill, takes a turret shot or two for his trouble, but they should be able to get this wave pushed out, and Vox is going to miss out on a little bit of farm. This composition just functions so well into Koshka in the early and mid game, where Koshka really excels, and that's what's going to make it really difficult for this Koshka to scale throughout the game. It's a risky pick with this 2.6 meta. This Baptiste has been, pretty relevant for a lot of teams. And again, you picked Koshka in the Lance, someone who is very good at keeping Koshka off of her targets.
Yeah, I think the Baptiste pick is really oppressive in the early game. You throw down an Ordained, and it's basically telling someone you're either going to stand still and take a bunch of damage from the rest of my team, or you're going to move, get stunned, and take a bunch of damage from the rest of my team. Like it's just really tough to play against in the early goings until you can get that reflex block. So rushed reflex block is going to be extremely important for the side of Team Genesis if they want to have any chance of preventing this from snowballing out of control. Nice, the Uncaptain Frenzy onto Trinomial there, but he immediately answers with the Fearsome Shade. Gonna be able to stay alive for a while, gets the fountain, is trying to stick around here. A couple bad mojos will heal him up and can land them onto multiple targets, especially. And just do that. Gets a little bit of healing, and just like that, the team can stick around now, although they are at a fountain disadvantage.
They're at a fountain disadvantage, but they are definitely at a poke advantage. And Koshka is going in pretty deep. Evader having to escape. It looks like they're going to find the kill.
Yep, Evader goes down. Are they going to find anything else, though? As now it's going to be Vox kind of stuck in a bad spot. Wants to be the best. trying to get the damage onto this Baptiste, but it will be Nova Fusion taking that kill instead. Looks like Genesis, they're not done though. They want to try and take out Nova Fusion, but as he uses those boots to get to the safety of his jungle, they're going to back off.
Yeah, and you know, really well of them to find the kill on that Ringo. Ringo came out a little too far. They still had that fountain in their pocket. Catherine did burn it on herself, but it kept her alive long enough to re-engage, find the kill on the Ringo. And it was actually Koshka that got the kill, but the engage from Catherine was really key. It gave vision onto the Ringo, and Koshka was able to jump. So got to be a little more careful on this Ringo. Again, you don't have that much mobility. You don't have any way to escape once the enemy gets onto you.
Nova Fusion, with a lot of these impales, he's throwing them out in a way that he's trying to predict where the enemy's going to move to look to dodge the impale, but then they don't, and it ends up missing. It's actually been kind of entertaining to watch the mind games going on there, but as all of Chubby Bunny's rotating back up to the lane, it's going to be a little bit of damage onto this turret, but now they're going to be on the run. Genesis having to back away. The fear is going to come out. That's going to lock him down for a while. Big Hellfire Brew onto I Want to Be the Best, but he's going to survive with the fountain. Fountain from Chubby Bunny is going to be at use, keeps Evader alive, and now they're turning this back around, but never mind, it's Low Fat Yogurt getting the first kill of that trade. However, now Trinomial and Nova Fusion going to chase down this box. Trinomial does not have much energy left, but he's got enough for a bad mojo, and that's going to take another kill.
Yeah, and the sheer damage this Baptiste can put out with just one Shatter Glass is amazing. I mean, you do have to use this kit correctly. You have to proc that Reap Soul Shard charge. But if you do it correctly, you can really put down the pain with very, very minimal gold spent in your build. And that's going to allow him to build into a Clockwork here very early, which is going to give his Ordained a lot more effectiveness because it's going to be up a lot more frequently. And
I want to point out the Ringo's build as well. Doesn't look to be going for a tension bow at all for the first two items. And that's something we don't see terribly frequently. We have seen it every so often where maybe the tension bow will come out third item or fourth item if it's a full offense Ringo, but you know, could we potentially see a build that doesn't include the tension bow at all?
We could still see like a Sorrow Blade Tornado Trigger Monocle build or a Sorrow Blade Monocle Breaking Point build. It is possible. I do like the early aggression the tension bow can bring to the table, but you know, opting out of it, and that's where armor is going to be really, really important for the side of I Want to Be the Best in Low Fat Yogurt on these typically squishy heroes in general.
Yeah, well, we'll see what they can do. Evader is going to be taking a lot of damage here from Low Fat Yogurt, but again, you have to worry about Trinomial, and they are going to find a big kill onto I Want to Be the Best. Hellfire Brew was going onto that dead target, so not really going to be a concern, but the fountain is used by Dwagzer. It's going to be keeping them just barely alive here. And they are still at high risk of going down. If Trinomial and the team decides to play, they are going to take down Low Fat Yogurt, and Dwagzer is one attack away. That's going to go over to Nova Fusion. Now this turret, are they going to try and siege it up? Evader got dropped very, very low, and Trinomial just wants to steal away the jungle.
Yeah, and I think this is a good call. The Vox is coming back, who now has the Tension Bow and Poison Shift complete, and still has his boots proc up. So I think it's definitely smart to not risk any kills after you do pick up a trade of that nature. They might have been able to get a little bit of damage down on the turret. Again, staying was pretty risky, but they definitely could have got, with this Ringo's build at least, could have got some pretty heavy damage down.
Well, Chubby Bunnies, they're going to be feeling pretty confident. As long as they can keep Evader alive, it feels like they should be able to take these team fights at the moment. He just has a lot more damage than what I Want to Be the Best is able to output with this Sorrow Blade Tornado Trigger build that he's working on. And of course, Trinomial able to shut down a target and do so much damage. We'll have to keep our eyes on where they try and engage, who they try and engage on. Nova Fusion rolling forward, going to spot out multiple enemies. Going to be Immersive Pursuit used by Catherine, but no stun coming from it. So do they decide to try and pull the trigger here? It looks like they're just not really willing to go turret diving just yet. And they're going to poke underneath this turret, however. And now trying to keep Low Fat Yogurt at bay as well. it's really just a matter of time until they do go fully looking for a fight. They're just going to worry about poking. Low-fat yogurt jumps in and gets melted. Somehow stays alive for now. No fountain going to get used just yet. So that's a good trigger discipline there from Dwagzer, not needing to activate that, but may have to do so soon because the damage from this Baptiste is just massive.
The damage is huge, and this Koshka is really going to need in the near future to really try to get that Atlas Pauldron built. Koshka is so good at getting to a target and getting that Atlas down. If Ringo with this Tornado Trigger Starro Blade build is allowed to go untouched, then the single target damage he brings to the table is going to be massive, especially with only a tier 1 armor being built on, but well, I guess Koshka just upgraded to a tier 2 armor, but this Vox still incredibly squishy, only having a tier 1 armor, tier 1 shield. Evader can bring a lot of damage and is really prioritized defense against this Koshka, knowing that Koshka is going to want to find him on the back line every single fight.
10-2 on the scoreboard in favor of Chubby Bunnies. They're going to be looking, again, just to keep controlling this jungle. Multiple times Trinomial now has gotten in and stolen away these forward camps away from low-fat yogurt. You're looking the lane 131 to 112 for the lane CS, another big advantage for the side of Chubby Bunnies. They still haven't been able to crack into this turret just yet, but they have a very strong siege comp that they can just continue to push and poke at this turret, and they will eventually find a crack.
Yeah, and especially as these death timers start to get longer, this is pretty late in the game that we still haven't seen a turret on either side. But as this damage scales up, one death even can really spell doom for your turret. And we see the side of Chubby Bunnies going really quickly for this gold miner, and they have a lot of single target damage. They're going to get it down before the side of Genesis even knows what's going on.
Gold miner captured. It's going to increase this gold lead, already up at about 4,000 gold here at 14 minutes. Without having any turrets taken, it's a pretty impressive number to be at.
It is, and I think this turret is going to go down here in the near future. The damage coming out of the side of Chubby Bunnies is going to get huge. Vox still no defense against this Ringo, and they don't even need to kill the Vox. The Koshka backed, which really cost the turret here, and that's going to be... Ringo doesn't have energy for the Hellfire Brew. He is unable to find the kill. I was hoping he was going to get it, but just a hair shy in energy.
Now, first turret down means that they're going to be able to start making even more progress and controlling even more of the jungle. The Crystal Sentry is going to fall as well. The Chubby Bunnies are just in complete control of this game.
They are, and this falls back into, I just really like the composition that they have put together. Koshka has to dive to get the damage down that she needs, and just this combination of Baptiste and Lance really limiting Koshka's ability to move around freely like we would normally see makes it such a huge danger. Again, the single target damage this Ringo can put down has just taken both Vox and Koshka down in just a couple of basic attacks.
That's exactly what they've been able to do up to this point of the game. Kraken is going to be started up here by Chubby Bunnies. Someone from Genesis is going to have to come and check on this at some point. They do finally recognize what's going on. Kraken's already almost captured. Are Chubby Bunnies going to just give up on this? They're definitely playing it cautiously, and Kraken is largely going to, reset. So they do just pass on trying to finish off this Kraken, not wanting to risk it getting stolen, and will instead just return to farming.
And it's really starting to get to the point that I don't know what Genesis can do to come back, other than maybe if low-fat yogurt finds a clean stun onto a Vader, maybe they can pull something off. But as the game gets later and later, this Koshka starts to fall off pretty heavily if you don't get that utility stun down. Catherine does build up, but again, Catherine's really the best at blocking skill shots, so yes, it does pretty well into the Baptiste, but again, this Ringo is really where we're finding all of the damage right now.
Yep, so Kraken started up once again by Chubby Bunnies. It's going to get spotted out once again, but this time, are they going to look for a fight instead? They're going to be breaking off of this Kraken, but not going to be finding any opponents, so just really trying to force a fight here. Chubby Bunnies are.
I mean, they're at a point in the game that they can force a fight. This Koshka has really been rendered pretty useless, I want to say, because as soon as she dives in, we notice this Lance has a Shiver Steal. So once Koshka commits in, she cannot go anywhere. And that's what we're seeing in these fights is Koshka diving, not able to get the lockdown. The team's not able to follow up because of that. And it's looking just really good for the side of Chubby Bunnies, especially getting this Kraken now. A missed Vox out there trying to get the steal. I don't know if this is going to be quite game unless if they can find an ace, but there's a lot of potential here. At 17 minutes, these death timers are getting longer and longer. But with 3 infusions on the side of Chubby Bunnies, they may be able to bring it to an end here.
Yeah, they very likely could. I mean, with Kraken pushing in, they'll have an opportunity to once again force a fight that they've been looking for some time now. They are going to just start getting damage onto this turret. Going to be low-fat yogurt getting caught up in the Ordained, gets out of there thanks to having that defensive item. But now low-fat yogurt is going to be falling as they catch him once again. This turret gets taken out very, very quickly. The damage on this Baptiste is absolutely insane. Another Ordained on the Catherine this time. I want to be the best is going to get melted off the back of that. Now it's just one member left. Just Wagzer. He gets stunned up from the Ordained. And that's an ace. That should be the game and the series as Chubby Bunnies will take this one 2-0.
Yeah, and again, you know, finding that ace really secured the win. I would have liked to have seen Genesis put up a good fight there at the end. And this Slumbering Husk coming through just a little bit late on the Koshka. I think if she would have had this Slumbering Husk a little bit earlier with the damage that they were taking, it may have made a difference. But again, we do not see an Atlas at all, and this Koshka is so good at getting to the back line. You cannot give a Ringo with a crit Sorrowblade build that free reign over your team.
Yeah, this may come down to just some experience issues. The Slumbering Husk was really, I thought when I saw that come out, I was scratching my head. But more importantly, it was more of because of how fearful the Koshka was. He wanted to be able to get in and get out, and unfortunately that not atlasing Evader was such a huge disadvantage because it really was the primary damage dealer other than Trinomial, and Trinomial was more of a burst heavy damage dealer, but Evader would just stay in the fight and just dish out damage continuously. The crits, man, he was critting over, I mean, I think I saw a few shots over 300. That will chunk away at your health very quickly. And Chubby Bunnies, they move on. Not surprising. We talked about Chubby Bunnies being one of those teams that may be looking really hot here coming into this season. And not the original Chubby Bunnies that you guys may have heard of from a year ago over, that actually Dienzio and Aloha came out of. But Evader's still here, and Nova Fusion Trinomial to kick that off. Alright guys, so with that, we are going to be moving on to the next round here in just a few moments, as we're getting word on if we're ready to get into Rogue versus their opponent. I'm actually going to check real quickly for everybody to see what the status of our next series is. And it does look like, yeah, Rogue versus Team Swishers will be coming up next, everybody. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be getting into the round of 16 here in the winner's bracket.
Ben, Sam, and Ken are on separate journeys to defeat the menacing Vile Dragon. But let's just say luck isn't on their side. If only there was a way for them to find each other and band together. Well, that's why there's Band. It's a mobile app that allows people to come together using common interests. With Band, you can find fellow gamers, chat, schedule gaming sessions, and conduct polls. Stage epic battles with friends while sharing videos and photos along the way. So try Band today. Band. Be together.
Hey everybody, welcome back as we get ready for our next series here at the VIS Challengers. We're getting ready for round of 16. We're going right to round 16 from 32, and this is where the competition really starts to heat up. This is where we saw some of our first upsets as well yesterday in Group A. Joining me tonight, as always, Tasty Bacon and Denomine, as we've kicked off this first week with a lot of excitement. This next matchup might be a close one. It's hard to say. We are talking about Rogue, number 2 seed, going up against the Team Fishers with the roster Stormy Cross, Saints, and Esme. And this is a roster we've actually seen play really well at certain times. They played during VIS Pro. Now they're here during the Challengers to see if they can make a name against a very, very strong team in Rogue. GG. Denomine, is this going to be a tough test for Rogue? We're looking at, the seeding doesn't really tell the full story here. Ooh. Might be still waiting for Day to come back.
Did I fix it? Did I fix it?
I think you fixed it.
All right, I think I fixed it. So the seeding definitely does not tell a full story here. We do have a huge pickup from Rogue with Pawn the Original. And again, this player we've seen with varying success on a couple different teams, most notably and recently, I would say Immortals. He had some huge success. So that's really going to be a challenge for Esme, who I imagine is going to be his jungle matchup here. They both bring a pretty off-meta hero pool, I would say, to the game. So I definitely think this is going to be an interesting jungle matchup that is very, very similar tier of play. Evol, though, is definitely going to be a huge player to watch for me this game. He is an incredible, incredible captain, and I think his play style with Pawn now on the team is going to be huge.
Yeah, no, it's really great to see Pawn come into this new roster. We'll see if he can get some traction here. Hammy's still in the lane, but Evol, you were talking about, yeah, he was actually able to play during VIS Pro on Team Solomon roster, and he looked so sharp when he played with those guys. Really a really standout support, and actually it's one of the few things from Rogue that really seems to excel is Evol's play. Now we just need to see that mesh correctly. I think their upgrade in the jungle could be really, really potent here. Team Swishers, though, I mean, there are some big names here. Stormy, Cross, Saints, Esme. These are players who have played at the top level in a few tournaments previously. They're really not, known for making, big results, but they've been able to compete very closely with some of these top teams. So I think this will be a great indicator on their strength for the rest of this Challenger split, if they can make some momentum here. Taking a game off of Rogue, I think, would be a great start for their chances. If a team that loses here isn't out of the tournament, they're going down to the elimination round, but they're still in it. But you still have to imagine that you want to make a big showing in this second round.
Especially against the number 2 seed, being down at the number 15, again, it doesn't really show that much, but it's going to be a huge confidence booster for Team Swishers if they can pull something together here. I just think this Rogue matchup is really going to give them a run for their money, and this might be the first game we see today go to a Game 3.
I'm curious to see if it does as we get into the draft for game number 1. Kicking it over to you and Tasty Bacon Day to get us into it, see what we got so far.
All right, and we got the Catherine ban coming off the table pretty early here for the side of Rogue, which to me is a little interesting. I think this might not necessarily be targeted against the side of Stormy Cross, who's going to be the captain, Team Swishers captain. I don't think it's targeted as much as I think it's something that Pawn might not want to play into. Again, we talked about him having a very off-meta hero pool, and Catherine does pretty well into some of the heroes he specializes in, that Rhyme.
I'm going to cut you off, sorry there, Downey, but I'm just stunned that we just had Baron and Grumpjaw get through not only the bans, but the first pick as well. There's going to be the Baron. I mean, they could run Baron and Grumpjaw here, but they're going to go Baron Lyra.
And Baron functions really well with Lyra. We know that Bright Bulwark can really limit Baron's mobility to get out of a fight. So on a heavy engage, Lyra can be a very useful tool into a Baron. But I do like, it looks like we're going to have a Grumpjaw pickup on the side of Rogue here. And Grumpjaw actually fares pretty well into the Baron, because he's able to get to that backline, and the living armor stacks that he brings to the table really gives him a lot of sustain, where Baron is normally able to burst somebody out. You don't have that same damage versus this Grumpjaw, especially when they prioritize defense early on in the game.
Well, at least both of these teams will end up with one of these two power picks. The Fortress, I also really like going into the Lyra. I think there's a lot of strengths to be had there, and if this is going to be a Rhyme pick, this will be a very, very interesting selection.
This is indeed a very interesting selection. I like this Fortress into the Lyra and into the Rhyme. Bringing down that fortified health, bringing down the healing is huge. But the Rhyme handles really well into Grumpjaw, and the Baron handles really well into Vox. So this, I want to say the side of Team Swishers won the draft here. But if Hammy can keep his positioning and fight on the very edge of Baron's range and really build up some stacks, I think Hammy has the skill potential that he can still pull together this game.
Well, we'll have to see how it's going to work out, as it is Rogue Gaming taking on their challengers, and it is their opponents of Team Swishers. on the other side. 2 versus 15. So you expect Rogue to be able to take victory here. But Team Swishers, they are going to have other plans in mind. We'll see if this Baron Lyra combo will be enough.
Indeed, and this Lyra brings a lot of early game potential with Stormy Cross being on this Rhyme. And I do want to point out that this is Stormy Cross playing in the jungle and Esme playing Roam, which I was totally not expecting, first of all. Perhaps this is something they've been tinkering around with and just decided, you know, maybe Stormy is the better Rhyme and Esme is the better Lyra, but it'll be interesting to see going into game 2 if they stick with this.
All right, well, it's going to be definitely interesting to see how it plays out, as right now in the lane, it's going to be pretty standard farming. No one's really fighting in the jungle either. We might be seeing a little bit, no, doesn't look like either team is going to be going for that Ancient Treant right away. So Rogue recognizes that Stormy Cross went up to the lane, and they're going to take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, and you know, these teams, you know, we have a scaling lane composition on both sides. So, you know, Vox definitely, as the game goes on, is going to scale up. And, you know, obviously the same with Baron. And then we have 2 very early and mid-game heroes with this Rhyme and Grumpjaw. So positioning is going to be huge coming into this game. We've seen Vox have success into Baron. It's usually pretty difficult. But it's just really hard to call this early in the game. I still like Swisher's draft a little bit more, but I think Rogue might be the more consistent team.
Well, at the moment, it's not really going to be one advantage either way, as both teams sitting at 5k gold. I mean, first 2 minutes in, neither side has really made any sort of movements towards being aggressive. It's just been a very safe and very passive start to this game. I don't expect it to stay that way, but we'll see how long it lasts.
Yeah, no, as we start getting to 1-2 items completed for this Vox, he's definitely going to start to be a little bit more aggressive. And then as the game gets later on from that, the Baron's really going to start to take off. So I don't think the Grumpjaw has too much engaged potential into this Rhyme because of the root potential. It's again just too tough to say, and it looks like we have a tension bow forming on this Grumpjaw, which is interesting because we have the weapon Vox in the lane, so maybe a double proc Grumpjaw. To me, that's a little interesting. You know, we typically see the utility Grumpjaw or the all weapon Grumpjaw. It might even just be a double weapon comp. It's just too early to say. I could see with the tension bows that Pierce be pretty effective, but it comes with a lot of risk too.
Yeah, definitely going to be a lot of risk regardless of how they decide to build this. Because, well, right now down in the jungle, it is going to be Stormy Cross is going to go down as First Blood. Pawn the Original and Evol able to pick that one up. The kill does go to Pawn on this Grumpjaw, so that's going to be a nice start for him. Able to get a little bit extra when this shop does spawn. Actually, just going to recall instead of waiting the 12 seconds until the shop does spawn. It's going to start off with that tension bow. So we could end up seeing still an on-hit Grumpjaw, you know, going for the tension bow, Aftershock, and Storm Crown. But typically, if you're going to get that, the Storm Crown is what is finished first, or at the very least, the Stormguard banner. So it'll be definitely curious to see how Pawn the Original decides to go advance with this build.
Yeah, and I could see it going double weapon. We've seen that tension bow, double monocle, Grumpjaw build just be able to put out huge amounts of damage. So well, there's the crystal bit, so that takes away that. But so it is going to be that double proc on hit Grumpjaw. That's pretty risky into this Baron. If you don't do enough damage to kill him early on in the fight, he's going to scale out of control going to the late game. And Grumpjaw does find the kill there.
It gets another kill onto the Baron. Right now, it's going to be very easy to blow up that Baron because he is extremely squishy. Right now, they're going to be diving onto the Lyra as well, finding a second kill. Looking for a third. Stormy Cross going to get eaten. Pawn's going to take a lot of damage from the turret. They spit out Stormy Cross, and Pawn's going to have to jump right back in because of the Winter Spire. Doesn't matter. They get the kill. Saint's going to come up to try and defend this turret. It's going to lose a lot of health before Rogue finally backs away.
Yeah, about a third of the health of that turret going down, so not enough that it's in danger of Vox being able to push it by himself with this Baron here. But we really got to be careful on the positioning on this Lyra. Lyra is in general just a very squishy captain hero. So after the Baron died, to be playing that far out in front of the turret before you have that arcane passage really was a little bit of a throw in that fight. The Lyra could have backed off, and then it would have been Esme and Stormy Cross to defend the turret. You just can't give up that many kills early. We talk about the late game is really important on this Baron, but if you allow this Vox and Grumpjaw to scale too quickly, then it's going to make it really difficult.
Yeah. So 4 kills found for Rogue in the early goings. This Grumpjaw is going to have so much burst damage, and that's the way they decided to deal with this Baron. So a lot of teams have different ideas of what you need to do to keep a Baron in check. And looks like Rogue has decided their method is going to be just nuke him and not give him the chance to get his massive amounts of damage out, as Pawn's going to go in again. Big burst onto this Baron. Will survive for now. Saints at about half health. Has the Lyra to help heal as well. So he's going to be okay for now, but can only take that massive chunk of damage from Pawn the original so many times.
Yeah, and I'd really like to see Esme work on the Bright Bulwark a little bit more. When you see Grumpjaw start winding up for that Grumpy ability, if you drop your Bulwark, he's going to get knocked right on the edge of that wall, and it does cancel the movement. So the Lyra has a lot of potential to protect the Baron. He's just going to have to work on the timing. If the timing is late, then your Baron is going to die. If the timing is good, then your Baron is going to have the potential to get that huge damage that we know Baron to have.
So there's going to be opportunities for Rogue to try and find some more damage here. Looking to get a siege up. Saints is going to take a little bit of damage there. Just the A from Grumpjaw, though. So not that massive burst that we've been seeing. And once that Aftershock is completed, though, Pawn is going to start really hurting. Goes in, gets the hangry, or the stuff, sorry, onto Lyra. Now they have themselves a free kill just about. Saints got some good damage down in return, but not going to be anywhere near enough to save his captain.
Not near enough indeed, and this falls back into the realm of, we always discuss that when there is a Grumpjaw on the enemy team, we just really got to start seeing these teams draft a couple stuns. Glaive was on the table, the Catherine did get taken off the table, and Catherine's probably one of the best ones into the Grumpjaw, but your only stun is if Rhyme is able to land that Valkyrie ultimate, and that is going to be turret number 1 going to the side of Rogue. Rogue looking incredibly strong coming into this game.
They are definitely going to be looking for more advantages, almost giving a kill over there, but on the original and Evol both do get recalled in time. Hammy going to go ahead and grab this Treant, get himself topped up so he can return to the lane and stay out here even longer. Looking at the items, just a big lead has already been picked up by Rogue. Just in terms of itemization, I mean, you look at the 2 carries, Hammy sitting on 2 completed tier 3 items and has 2,000 gold in his pocket, whereas Saints just finished his 2nd tier 3 and is about to gets a good way into another one, but it doesn't have any money left. And so the damage output is just going to be a little bit advantageous for the side of Rogue.
Yeah, and one thing that was huge about that last fight was Pawn the original picked up a level 7 infusion, and as he rotated down to shop, he's already picked up another infusion now for a level 9 infusion. So that's going to allow them to be a lot more aggressive. With this Aftershock completed and the infusion, his ability is going to be up a lot more frequently. That Stuffed is going to be a threat that's going to be up and available multiple times in a fight, and that is huge.
Immense gold payout collected by the side of Rogue. That's going to increase this gold lead even further, as they have a turret and a gold miner, as well as this 5-0 kill advantage. It's leading them to a nice solid gold lead for themselves here, just under 10 minutes into the game. I mean, they're not really giving many opportunities to their opponents, kind of just controlling the majority of this map.
Yeah, and a lot of credit goes out to Pawn on this Grumpjaw. He's really been doing a good job timing his abilities where he's able to get in before Esme is able to drop down a Bright Bulwark. And he is finding that damage very, very clearly on Saints and taking him out early on in these fights.
Speaking of that damage, looks like they're maybe positioning themselves for another fight. Nope, just gonna get over the wall and steal away some more of this jungle. Just gonna force Stormycross to be a little bit further behind. I mean, the CS numbers are very similar in the jungle, but it is those 5 kills onto Pawn that is giving him a bit of an edge. As Rogue's gonna rotate back up. I really like the fact that they're kind of sticking together already. 10 minutes into the game is a very early time to be doing that, and because they have the advantage, they're then forcing their opponents to have to stick together as well, which is just ensuring that they're not going to be able to catch up as easily. Crystal Sentry is going to get worked on, will end up going down. And that's going to be the stuff used onto Lyra, preventing the fountain use as they kill the Baron. They kill the Rhyme as well, and then they will finish off the Lyra. Excellent work by Rogue, quickly and cleanly picking up an ace.
Yeah, and Rogue is doing an incredible job right now, really knowing that they have that early game aggression with this Scrumpjaw Fortress combination, and they're making sure it doesn't go to waste. That is really the win potential for the side of Swishers, is they have to make it to a point in the game that the Baron is just able to scale out of control. And with this aggression, it's going to be very, very difficult. We see Saints is still keeping up on farm pretty well. He is at 10 CS a minute, which, with the way the game has been going, is actually a pretty astonishing feat. But Hammy's sitting up here at 143 in just 12 minutes.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant number, you could say, to be well over that 10 CS per minute mark in this game. I mean, it just kind of goes to show how much control and how dominant Rogue has been thus far throughout the first 12 minutes. You've got these massive kill totals, just big leads all around. Every single member of Rogue has an advantage over their opponent in terms of gold and items. The Crystal Sentries going to be defeated once again, and Rogue are just, they control the entire map at this stage of the game.
Yeah, and having this 7,000 gold lead at 12 minutes is absolutely massive. Here they are denying more jungle out of the side of Swishers. This, as soon as the Kraken's up, they can really just start taking it. With the way these fights are going, with how far ahead they are, Baron has completed the 3rd item, but again, this Grumpjaw is super tanky into the Baron and able to dive the backline really easily. That's a clean gold miner going over to... Oh, they pull off of it. Very, very interesting choice to pull off there.
Yeah, I'm really kind of surprised that they did, but now they're going to be in a bit of trouble. Pawn is going down very low. He's going to be able to escape. The heal from Lyra will allow Baron to get 1 kill. Evol is looking like he's going to fall next, and he does. Excellent job by the side of TS to find these kills. Not quite going to get the 3rd, but this was a big moment for them, able to just even get something in this game, finally finding a little bit of a foothold. Pawn's going to try and chase them off, looking for the kill on the Saints. Saints is just going to jump away, though, and will stay safe.
Yeah, and Pawn doing a huge, just great job really dancing around this damage. The turret is still up, and I really think we lost out on a huge opportunity for Rogue here. They had that gold mine down to 10% health and didn't finish it. So worst case scenario was you lose out on the Vox, and then you come up and clear as a team, and they're trying to fight, and I'm not sure where the smart trade-off was there. That was 900 gold in your pocket, and instead you gave up 2 kills. So I mean, kind of questionable. It's not enough to bring Swishers back into the game, but this Baron is starting to get up to that point where he's going to get out of control. He has the Tension Bow, Sorrowblade Monocle, working into another Monocle, and is infused at this point, so they really got to be careful with positioning on Hammy.
Yeah, well, right now, Hammy is going to be definitely a target. I'm not sure if they want to focus on Hammy or upon the original more in these fights. I feel like Pawn is the immediate threat, but Hammy is going to be the one that dishes out a lot of damage if left unchecked. So those are the choices that are going to have to be made by TS, as they are going to be having Kraken awakened now. Rogue hanging around, looks like they want to try and start this up right away. It's going to be interesting to see if they actually commit to this or if they're just trying to force a fight.
Again, I think they're still at a safe position where they can force a fight. Hammy has 5 tier 3 items completed and an infusion. So as long as they don't take too much damage before they engage, I think they should win this pretty easily.
Well, they're going to get silenced up and take a lot of damage. So that decision to try and force a fight not working out for Rogue. As that is going to be Team Swishers able to force them away from the Kraken. Ultimates were used by both Hammy and Evil there. So I really got to say advantage over to the side of Team Swishers. Even though they're not going to get anything off of this, they don't get any kills, they don't get any gold, they were still able to push Rogue away from the fight without really having to invest anything into it themselves.
Yeah, and definitely huge cooldown burn there out of Evol. This ultimate from Fortress is down for another 30 seconds, and that is a huge thing going into this Lyra. You really have to get those mortal wounds down if you want to win the fight, but a good disengage out of Swishers wins them that fight, and now they engage pretty heavily here, and there's that damage coming out of the side of Rogue, and that should be one dead Baron, and they should be able to find Stormy Cross shortly thereafter.
Yeah, they're going to keep fighting here. Hammy gets dropped very low, but he's going to be able to survive thanks to the healing of the Fountain and the Poison Shiv. An ace for Rogue, making this 11-2. Now they're going to start working on this Kraken. There is no Storm Crown, so this Kraken capture, not exactly the fastest thing we've ever seen. Hammy is going to be pushing in the turret. He's going to be able to take that very easily with the help of these ace buff minions. Will actually leave it for the minions to finish off. Meanwhile, Kraken is very close to getting captured now. Hammy is going to clear out a little bit of the jungle. Thought maybe he might think about going for the sentry, but Kraken is unleashed for Rogue, and now they're going to be looking to very likely push in to try and end the game.
Indeed they are, and I think this is absolutely massive for Rogue having this Kraken. It was really well timed. We discussed that the Kraken take was pretty slow, but they had that ace to really comfort them. There was nobody alive on the enemy team, so they took their time clearing it, which gave Hammy time to push the turret, rotate down. They finished the Kraken. They were all at shop, and now Hammy and Pon both have a fresh infusion with this Kraken marching down towards just the Vein Crystals.
Alright, so Vein Crystal turrets all at stand between Rogue and a 1-0 lead in this best of 3. They are just going to be hanging around, waiting for Kraken to get in there. Now, do they go for the fight, or it looks like Team Swishers is going to bring the fight to them? Nice wait for it comes out. They do get in stuff onto the Rhyme and blow up the Baron. Rhyme is going to fall shortly after. One turret is down, only one remaining. Doesn't look like Esmai has any interest in trying to defend this 1 versus 3. Wouldn't have worked out very well regardless, as Rogue will take game number 1 very decisively.
Very decisively indeed, and I have to question why this Baron has been taking the Arcane Passage in. What they really need to do is they really need to get Stormy Cross to that front line and let Saints still fight around the back line, jump around the fight. When he takes that Arcane Passage in and then tries to jump out, the range of Grumpjaw's abilities is just too huge, and the movement that Fortress provides for Vox, they're able to jump all the way to the back line, all the way to that Baron. Stormy Cross is left on this slow Rhyme all the way in the back of the fight at that point, and that's not where you want to be. You don't want to let the team with Grumpjaw, Fortress, Vox engage that heavily on Baron. Baron needs to fight around the fight, not from the middle of it.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think there was actually a mistake, not the second to the last fight, where it wasn't intentional for the Baron to go through the portal. It seemed like when he went through the portal, he was completely caught off guard. And that was, I mean, if that was intentional, that was just way too far forward for a Baron. And they were actually turning that game around at that point. That was right before the Kraken take.
Indeed, they did find a clean fight there. Worked out really well for them. But then they didn't get anything off the back of it. They cleaned up 2 kills. They didn't take the turret. They didn't clean up the gold mine. There wasn't a Kraken up to take. If you get kills, you have to capitalize on objectives to make it worth. Getting 2 kills is not going to turn the game around the way the Baron would have liked to have think.
Yeah, they definitely need to play the Baron play more on the back line. He was caught in the last 2 fights way too far forward, ultimately resulted in his death. And Feels bad, but, we're going to get ready for game number 2, and Rogue, looking really strong. Maybe, I think, one bad fight that entire match, and ultimately they keep it, really, really good. We saw Hammy played really well in lane, and Pon the Original and Grumpjaw. I have to say, it was kind of surprising to see them give over Grumpjaw, but, Stormy Cross and team, they get on Saints, they get the Baron. The Baron pick is a really good pick into the late game, if you can get there.
It is, and I think I'd really like to see Esme in the jungle position coming into this next game, and Stormy Cross back in that roam position. I just feel like that's where this team should be the most comfortable, and we didn't see that this game. So throwing in the surprise maybe could give you an edge, but it just didn't seem to work out for them this time.
Maybe. I mean, we're assuming it's a surprise, as we are on live clients, so there is a possibility that you can forget to switch. But I think
that is correct too. That is correct too with the live draft.
It is live, but I think that was their intention. I think they were looking to go in and maybe change it up a little bit. I think you see Saints on the Baron. I've seen him play Baron before, so that was probably intentional. As this time around, the draft is underway and looking a lot more conventional.
Yeah, and seeing that. Oh, wow. Okay, so we see the Grumpjaw come up the table, and the Baron is left first pick open for the side of Swishers. They do decide to pick it up, and I think this is Rogue baiting out that Baron. I think they just have an answer to it at this point.
Well, we'll see. They are starting with the Lyra pick, which I don't think is the support you want into the Baron. We know the Bulwark can be effective if used correctly, but it's more aggressive, whereas the Catherine can definitely be better at holding him in place, a little bit more defensive to reflect some of that damage. Stun's definitely reliable, but the Lyra is the play they're going to use, and it seems like, for Rogue, their game plan has been to keep Team Swishers off of this Fox.
It has, and I do like the Idris coming out here. Idris provides, with his Shimmer Strike, he does provide the ability to jump onto the Baron and become untargetable. So that's going to prevent him from taking damage. Now, the danger in this is if Idris jumps onto Baron and Baron jump jets out of the fight, all of a sudden Idris is way far away from his team on the back line with this Baron and the rest of the team collapsing on top of him. So we're gonna have to see how this Idris can play it out. I can see it working out well, but I can also see Hammy getting baited in on this Idris to a jump jets jump into a gauntlet with this Black Feather.
Yeah, and so far I really like what Rogue's coming up here. They are looking at, and the Idris is with the Lyra, you're going to be able to get a lot of sustain and jumping in and being aggressive and protecting yourself from that Baron initially. Pon the Original is going to come on that Rhyme, and we've seen Pon's Rhyme. It's really, really potent, and well, definitely excited to see how it turns out in this game.
I'm excited to see how it turns out indeed, and I really like the Rhyme into what is most likely going to be the Crystal Black Feather. What is going on here? Okay, so now we have Esme on the Baron, Stormy Cross on the Black Feather, and Saints on the Arden, which is... I'm getting really confused by the Swisher roster and what they're doing here. Yeah, so maybe just trying out some new things. This is the winner's bracket still, so I guess even if they do lose here, they can work their way up through the loser's bracket still, so maybe just trying to feel some things out here. But Pon the Original is going to be huge on the Rhyme this game. We discussed before that he is just really known for that Rhyme play, and Evil getting on this Lyra, which to me is a huge comfort pick for him. I haven't seen Hammy too much on Idris, but again, I think Hammy is one of those laners that is really just underrated. I feel he's a lot better than a lot of people give him credit for, so I think this could be a really strong draft for the side of Rogue, and I'm leaning on the side of Rogue for sure at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there, Denoni. I think just after seeing the way Rogue played in Game 1, you're going to have to just give them the advantage regardless. But we'll see if Esme, now swapping roles, is going to be able to carry better with this Baron than Saints was able to. And Hammy and Evol up here in the lane with this Idris. It's going to be curious to see where the build is for Idris. There's been so many different builds we've seen across Challengers and VGA in both North America and Europe. We've seen a couple Crystal Idrises, though this is almost certainly going to be Weapon. And
I certainly think this is going to be a Weapon one.
Yeah, but even the Weapon build path, we've seen a couple different options within the pathing for the items. So that's something for us to definitely keep our eyes on. But right now, with a Book of Eulogies, it's going to be able to just really sustain quite well, especially alongside a Lyra.
Yeah, and you know that Lyra brings a lot of early game presence, and with the combination of Pon on this Rhyme and Hammy on this Idris, I do think we're going to see some really crazy heavy engages out of Evol. You know, those arcane passages going in are going to be absolutely massive. There's going to be a lot of damage that very quickly gets to the backline. And that Bright Bulwark is going to prevent Esme from being able to jump out on this Baron. So if they can find the damage and get Baron down early, we're going to see a very similar outcome from last game, where the Baron ran.
Actually going to cut you off. Sorry, down in the jungle, we actually have Pon and Evol going toe-to-toe with Stormycross and Saints, and it is Pon and Evol able to find both of those kills, despite the Treant actually went over to the side of Team Swishers. It ends up being the kills, and then the back Treant getting stolen away by Rogue. So great job on that early aggression by Rogue, and that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, and Pon on this Rhyme again, you know, we consider a lot of those heroes where we're like, you know, is the Samuel the right pick here? Well, it's Lone Delphi Samuel, so, you know, it feels right. You know, that's what we feel when we see Pon on this Rhyme. Doesn't really matter who he goes into. He is just incredibly good on this hero, so he's going to be very, very scary for the side of Swishers in this game, especially for this Blackfeather. If he can get the root down and get a Winter Spire to follow up, that damage is going to be absolutely massive.
Well, right now they're going to be looking to perhaps think about going aggressive. No, Pon's going to back himself off of there, but looking at the gold already, it's over 1,000 gold lead in just the first 3.5 minutes for Rogue, thanks to that first blood and being able to steal away a bit of farm. Hammy's also doing really well for himself in the lane. It's just going to be, for now, about hanging in there and making sure to not give any options to the side of TS in order to Team Swishers, in order to let them get into this game, much like they did in game number 1. They just never really gave them much of a foothold, except for there was one fight that Swishers were able to win, and that was about it.
Yeah, you know, I think they really need to narrow down where they want their players to be playing. You know, Esme to me is a jungler. Stormycross to me is probably the best roamer on their team. You know, Stormycross is very flexible, can play anywhere. But I just feel the comfort is Saints in the lane, Esme in the jungle, Stormy on the captain position. And got another engage down here from the side of Rogue. Going to be a little more dangerous this time with the Crystal Sentry up, and they decide to just back on out. Pon does get the bottoms and the health tree in the middle. It's going to put him a little further ahead. You know, we see this Rhyme almost level 6, and Stormycross just now hitting level 5 on this Blackfeather.
Man, it's just advantages for many of the members of Rogue. The only one, I mean, the levels are basically dead even, but you know, you look at that gold lead, it is still continuing to grow, almost up to 2,000 now after the past minute and a half. So Rogue is doing a really good job of farming. However, Stormycross does steal away that mid treant from Pon. That's a little bit of some glimmers of hope there, perhaps, in this early game. They aren't really falling too much further behind, but now, oh boy, here comes all of Rogue, and this is going to be a lot of damage on Stormycross and Saints. They're going to jump right back in. Stormycross trying to get onto the backline, trying to get onto Hammy, but they aren't able to find the damage they're looking for. Valkyrie's going to be used, but not going to be finding a kill. So, again, there are chances here for Team Swishers as they are able to stave off Rogue, at least temporarily.
Temporarily indeed, and Rogue is looking really good today. You know, this is a team that we have seen, you know, maybe not have the best performance, and huge damage coming out of Esme there. That is going to be a dead Rhyme, and they are finding, you know, you discussed that glimmer of hope, and they commit heavy and find it, and that is looking really good for the side of Swishers. if they can keep finding these kills when Pawn gets a little too aggressive, then they might be able to pull this together. But, you know, if Pawn reins it back a little bit, I think they should be all right.
And they should be okay. It's a situation where you have to kind of understand your limits as this Rhyme. Rhyme can be very strong, but at the same time, there is an extent to how much you can do in the early game. Late game, he becomes this absolute monster that we've seen some players be able to even 1v3 with him on, but you have to get to that point first. You need to have, that Eve of Harvest, very likely going to be an item that gets picked up for Pawn on this Rhyme. He started with a Shatter Glass, which is something we don't typically actually see on Rhyme. We don't see Rhyme that frequently, but when we do, it's usually actually that Eve of Harvest that gets rushed. Eve of Harvest with the Broken Myth, but Pawn wanted that flat damage right off the bat.
Yeah, and this is something we see on him quite often, is he usually does go for that upfront damage, trading that health gain back from the Eve for just having more fortified health with the Shatter Glass. So limiting the real need for having that Eve.
So 7.5 minutes in, the pace of this game has definitely slowed down a little bit from game number 1 and even from the first few minutes of this one, as Rogue playing a little bit more defensively, having to worry about this burst damage from Stormy Cross as well as from Esmai on this Baron. Hammy, again, with the healing from the Poison Shiv and having Lyra at his side, will be okay. Will be able to deal with a lot of this burst damage, but now there's a tension bow completed for Esmai. That's going to be a little bit more burst, a little bit of armor pierce as well. Doing a good amount of damage. Are they going to actually find the kill? They do get the kill on the Saints. That was a big mistake by Saints. He was looking just to clear out some vision, and now, oh my goodness, Esmai just gets deleted under the turret. Evil is going to pop that fountain to make sure the turret doesn't take him out, but this should be turret number 1 going down in favor of Rogue.
Should be turret number 1, no questions asked, and Stormy is definitely going to have to back off. Cannot fight the side of Rogue right now. Pawn looking huge. That heavy engage we discussed from Evil with that Arcane Passage. Pawn got right down to Baron and got the root down, and it was a dead Baron from there, and the turret followed it up very, very quickly.
So 1 turret down is going to lead to a 3,000 gold lead for Rogue, able to get that first objective. Gold miner is full. We saw them have a lot of focus on the gold miner and Kraken in game number 1. Could be seeing them perhaps look to do the same here shortly in this second game of the best of 3. I mean, they have to feel like they have a pretty sizable lead with those kills, with that turret going over. They can very easily open up the scoreboard and tell that they have at least some sort of advantage. They may not know exactly how much they are ahead by, but it's pretty easy to know when you have a sizable lead like the one that they've built up now at just 9.5 minutes in.
Yeah, and it looks like Hammy is leaning towards going into this tension bow, which is going to give him a little bit of pierce, and with no defense yet. Wow, that damage, absolutely massive damage coming out of Hammy there. It looked like a Winter Spire found some damage too. Oh my god, Hammy diving that Baron, cleaning up the kill, and that's going to be a dead Arden too.
A triple kill for Hammy. This is why it just is so scary. It is a hero that has so much skill, such a high skill cap, and if you play it properly, you can absolutely take over games. That's exactly what Hammy's going to be looking to do as they take down the second tier turret. Rogue starting to run away with this one once again.
Yeah, and again, we discussed, Hammy on this Idris. We haven't seen him play it too much, but it definitely feels like a Hammy hero, and he is showing it right now. 4-0 on this hero, diving incredibly deep to that Baron backline, finding the kill, and follows up, killing the Arden underneath turret.
Alright, so there's the Eve of Harvest and an infusion picked up for Pawn the Original. This theme from Rogue is just going to be getting scarier and scarier as the game goes on. There is the opportunities for Swishers to get themselves back into this one are just getting smaller and smaller as 6,000 gold lead for the side of Rogue. It's not insurmountable, but it's starting to near that point where your only way back in is to rely on a mistake from your opponents.
Yeah, and to me, there's this Arden pick. Arden functions pretty well with everybody, but I just don't see the gauntlets being anything but defensive at this point. And somehow Saints is able to get out, and oh man, so dangerously low. The Winter Spire does find the kill on Blackfeather.
Oh, look at the team just from the chakrams. It's a weapon power Idris, and the chakram just did so much of Esmai's health. Esmai has to recall. Rogue is going to be looking to push up further onto this turret. They are going to be able to take this one down. Saints and Esmai have no chance of defending that, and Rogue are really just throwing their weight around, stealing away all the jungle. Very likely going to just grab this Crystal Sentry as well, because why no? They're actually not going to. They're going to pass on that, not wanting to risk a fight around that Sentry. So 12 minutes in, Rogue going to swing by the shop once more. E just finished, and I mean, what options does Swishers have at this point?
I don't know. We just seen a direct hit from Stormycross with that on point, which is overdriven with the Shatterglass onto Pon, and Pon's still at full health. So it really is going to be about if they can find the damage onto Hammy, who has an Aegis complete already. So not looking good for the Simon Swishers. If Esme can get the Baron build complete, maybe, but these heavy engages from Rogue are massive. And look at Pon all the way on the back line, finds Esme, Fountain Burned, Hammy finds the Blackfeather, and this is going to be a dead Arden. And Rogue's looking incredibly good today. This is, again, this is a team that has struggled in the past, that has really brought a good showing here to the Challenger Series, and I think this is going to be a team right up there with Immortals in the Challenger battles at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. They are looking incredibly dominant. I mean, Pon the Original, the addition to this squad, clearly one of a pickup that is synergizing well with the other two members of this team. And I mean, granted, it is still early in the Challengers. This is a team that has been consistently performing up near the top of Challengers, didn't quite perform up to snuff in the Vainglory 8. They were so close to retaining their Vainglory 8 spot as well at the end of last season, but did end up falling down. So have definitely looking like they've made some improvements. Right bulwark there just to try and get as slow as they are looking for more. They're trying to hunt down these members of Team Switchers, and if they find an ace, I mean, we just saw they were able to take down that one Crystal Sentry, or Crystal Vein Crystal turret, that's the word I'm looking for, without any help from minions. So you got to figure they are just one ace away from ending this game.
They are indeed just one ace away. We saw the damage they were able to put down on that turret, and that is 291 gold that is added to each of their pockets. Just shy of a full gold mine, but I really think if you're the side of Rogue right now, you look for that one last heavy fight and just push to end the game, because these fights have been so one-sided. Hammy and Pon able to find that damage, just absolutely massive. And look at Hammy onto the Arden, able to take the Arden down so early.
Yeah, Arden is going to be falling. Stormycross will try and do what he can here, but Hammy's just going to be jumping right onto him, getting a lot of damage, but Stormycross has a lot returned. One execute might be all he needs, but the healing from Evol will come through. That's another ace, and that is going to be the game for Rogue. They will take this series 2-0. Very clean, very dominant games.
Clean games indeed. This is a series I thought was going to be a lot closer, but Hammy, Evol, and Pon really bringing their A game to the table. And Evol is one of those captains that we've discussed is incredibly gifted, incredibly skilled, and this new roster they have put together is just very impressed so far. I'm almost speechless at this point.
Yeah, it really played well. We probably have to eat a little bit of our own words. We thought this might be a closer series. It was definitely not. In fact, it's the most one-sided series we've actually gotten to stream today. It was not even close. Pon the Original really looks comfortable here with Hammy and Evol, and Hammy's Idris is really sharp. We've seen Hammy play a lot of more like off-meta laners where he'll prefer a Saw or a different hero that maybe what everybody else wants to play. And him coming in with Idris, we have seen Idris really become dominant and situational pick, but he played it so well. Evol, of course, looks sharp as ever. Rogue, I gotta say, I'm really impressed. They are looking like they'll be a contender for those top 3 spots.
If they keep playing the way they did today, they might be more than a contender for those top 3 spots. They may be a massive contender for the VG8.
Yeah, a lot is on the line. The implications of being able to make it to those challenge battles are huge. It's going to be a really hard fight to get in, but, you know, Rogue, I think they may have found some of the pieces, at least so far. Now, granted, we are still early in these rounds. The competition is only going to get harder, as next week when we do move on to the next round of the winner bracket. We are going to be taking another look here, though. We have one more matchup to get to, guys, today. It is going to be Ardent Esports going up against Chaos Elite. That's right. Chaos Elite was our first upset from the round of 32 here. It was beating out Enforcers. I actually think that was their first upset. I'm going to take a look at Group A of the entire round, including Group A. Yeah, it was. So, Enforcers gets upset here today. They do drop down to the elimination round. And I did just check, and it does look like... Oh, I actually don't have update to see if they won their elimination round. And we did have another upset where Luminosity VG, 31 team seeded team, does make it through their elimination round match. But the next matchup, guys, we'll be getting ready for, it is going to be Ardent Esports going up against Chaos Elite. And that should be a pretty interesting one. Pretty surprising, actually, that Chaos Elite was able to take out Enforcers 2-0.
Yeah, and I think, you know, despite being a 31 seed, we're really going to have to look out for Luminosity here. You know, they did go down round 1 against Rogue. But then they were able to take out Frosty Slayers, who is a much higher seed. And, you know, we discussed the seeds may be kind of masked at this point.
Right.
But, you know, losing to, especially seeing how Rogue just played, losing to Rogue, I don't think you can let it hurt your morale too much. You know, review your games. You know, hopefully they were able to record or take some notes throughout the games. Pay attention to this Rogue team. If you can learn from them, even through a loss, then you might be able to make your way back through the losers bracket and may still have a chance at this.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to wait and see. We are going to take a quick break, everybody, but when we come back, we'll be getting into our third and final series of tonight. It's going to be Ardent Esports versus Chaos Elite. We'll see you guys all in a few.
Ben, Sam, and Ken are on separate journeys to defeat the menacing Vile Dragon. But let's just say luck isn't on their side. If only there was a way for them to find each other and band together. Well, that's why there's Band. It's a mobile app that allows people to come together using common interests. With Band, you can find fellow gamers, chat, schedule gaming sessions, and conduct polls. Stage epic battles with friends while sharing videos and photos along the way. So try Band today. Band. Be together.
Welcome back, everybody, as we get ready for our third and final series of tonight, at least that will be streamed. We are pretty excited to bring a matchup that might have been a little bit different than we expected. It is Ardent Esports, a number 6 seed, going up against Chaos Elite. Our first upset from the round of 32, making their way here to the round of 16. To see if they can keep that momentum going. And we are talking during the break to Dominate about one of the specific players on Chaos Elite that might stand out to a few of you guys. Let's take a quick look as we get into this. It is going to be, of course, Ardent Esports, Barista Beast. It is it Aerozank? I think that's how you say it, or Aerozank. Where it's Gion and Laid to Rest. Laid to Rest and Barista Beast have actually been on this roster for the last 2 seasons, and they've been really building that synergy and looking to improve their play. I've actually heard a lot of good things. A lot of people have talked about how Ardent Esports has really improved overall as a team.
Yeah, and again, Laid to Rest has had some huge performances on Baptiste, so I think that's something that we really have to consider out of the side of Chaos Elite. Their roster's a little less known, but I definitely think they have the potential to take games here. You just have to take into consideration the amount of time that Ardent has put into working on their synergy. We've seen this team together for a couple seasons now, especially Maurice the Beast and Laid to Rest, and they've looked really good overall. So I think you have to be prepared to go into that Baptiste into this lineup, and that Baptiste is going to be a absolutely huge pick in this single ban scenario. Yeah,
those little gains every season, they really would make the difference. We are into the draft, though, so let's get right into it. Tasty Bacon and Denominate. Right off the bat, we see a Vox ban, and this is actually an interesting ban because it does mean that they potentially open up that Baron and Grumpjaw pick for that A side.
Yeah, they definitely open up one or the other. I think you ban away the Baron here if you are the side of Chaos Elite. The Grumpjaw is just a little easier to deal with for most teams. And there is the Baron. I can see Ardent potentially baiting out the Grumpjaw here, though. To me, it doesn't really feel like a Laid to Rest or a Maurice the Beast hero. And I was just about to say too, I think Maurice on Ardent is an incredibly strong pick, especially with the aggression that Laid to Rest brings in the jungle. So this is going to be a very interesting draft going forward because there's a lot of open potential here for that Grumpjaw, but we could still see something like a Sky that just handles really well into Grumpjaw that tries to frontline all the damage.
It'll be interesting. They may even pass up on Grumpjaw here as well. And that would be very intriguing if Grumpjaw is allowed to get through. We saw, I think there was one game in Europe where Grumpjaw got through until the last pick before it was taken. But other than that, Grumpjaw has always been grabbed if it's available, and they are going to go ahead and pick this one up. So Lance Grumpjaw is going to be the likely jungle and captain duo for the side of Chaos Elite.
Yeah, and I think the clear strategy here for the side of Ardent has to be, we see them hovering this Black Feather, but I think this Grumpjaw really needs to have something. I am a little shocked to see this Baptiste come out here. Laid to Rest had a huge performance on it, but Baptiste doesn't have that same early game aggression that he has into Akashka that he does into Grumpjaw and Lance, who are both incredibly tanky heroes. So I really would have liked to have seen something like a Sky or even a Samuel potential pickup here. This is a little dangerous on the side of Ardent here, really relying on that comfort over the counter.
I don't think the Baptiste is that bad of a pick here. I mean, Grumpjaw is a hero that likes to move around a lot, has multiple dashes built into his kit. All 3 of his abilities are a dash of some kind. So if you put the Ordained on him, he's basically going to be stuck either not using his abilities or eating a stun as a result. So I actually really like the Baptiste into Grumpjaw. The Kestrel, I think, will have a few more opportunities to kind of try and move around and deal with that Ordained, but Baptiste is just such a strong pick in general that I don't mind really the Baptiste pick into pretty much anything. I don't think there's many heroes out there right now that are strictly hard counters. Unless there's maybe a Glaive or something along those lines that can dive onto the backline very easily. Otherwise, Baptiste is just super strong.
I do think Sky handles pretty well into Baptiste if you stay far enough away to not get ordained. Obviously, if you get that ordained down on you, it really limits Sky's mobility, which is huge in her kit. But because of the range of forward barrage and the fact that Baptiste doesn't have any movement abilities, I think if you get that Frostburn damage down, it really makes Baptiste susceptible to a lot of damage. But, you know, it can work either way. And huge damage coming out on Blue Dawn here.
Yeah, very early skirmish. They're actually going to get the first blood there on the side of Arden, but Maurice the Beast is going to go down. Now it's a 2-on-2, but it's not on the favorable side of the map for the side of Chaos Elite. They're going to be trying to run away, but it's actually just going to be Prodigy sort of sacrificing himself, just stalling, delaying time, and during all this time, Dismissed is just taking out these back camps. So Dismissed going to be doing pretty well for himself on this Grumpjaw, as finally they do take out Prodigy, but Dismissed is going to very likely be falling, doesn't take that second back camp. He's going to try and get over the wall. He does get there, but Tathow with the on point will cancel the recall, and now the minions will stop it as well. So Dismissed is going to go down, just a matter of how much time he wastes from Tathow, who is going to be taking quite a bit of time to actually get the kill here. Actually, Dismissed almost started to turn this around. What is going on? This Grumpjaw finally will end up falling, but not before making that a very, very close fight.
Yeah, Grumpjaw hitting level 2 there was huge. He had both of his abilities and getting a lot of damage down on this Blackfeather. Blackfeather is missing out on a lot of farm in the lane, but at least Laid to Rest tried to invade. It doesn't look like he's going to have a good time. It looks like Blue Dawn does find the kill. And this is what I was trying to say earlier, is this team may be less known, but I've run into these players before, and they are definitely a solid challengers team to play into, and that you have to take seriously. You cannot give this team an edge because they can take games off of pretty much anybody inside of this challenge series.
Absolutely. Well, right now, they're going to be pushing up onto Tathow, who is this lane. Blackfeather is going to get rooted up, will get knocked back towards the turret, but thankfully had some minions there. But with Dismissed charging in on that Grumpjaw, they're going to find a kill. Maurice is getting dropped very low as well. They're going to dive under the turret and will be able to get that second kill. So Chaos Elite absolutely bringing the fight to Arden.
Yeah, and this team's looking huge now. It is a pretty early game dominating comp with this Grumpjaw and Lance. They are predominantly early game heroes. They do handle okay into the late game, but as this Blackfeather and Baptiste scale up, it's going to become really difficult as the game goes on. It's going to be about how Blue Dawn can position himself around the fight, and if he can get some good stuns with the active camo down.
All right, so early on is probably one of the most eventful games in terms of both teams being able to find multiple kills in the first couple of minutes that we have had today. Now they're just going to be getting themselves set up in the middle of the map. Another route going out. Arden Prodigy just constantly going to be looking to harass onto Tathow. Tathow does have the Book of Eulogy, so as long as he doesn't get bursted from full to dead, he is able to regenerate himself back up to health. Laid to Rest going to be looking for that Ordained on the Prodigy. Prodigy just knocks them away. That's one way to deal with an Ordained. It's just basically tell your opponents you're not going to get anything out of this.
Yeah, and you know, this game looking pretty even so far. There is 1,000 gold lead. Huge damage coming out from this Grumpjaw on Maurice the Beast. He is able to get out. But a very small gold lead developing for the side. Oh man, why am I drawing a blank on team names today? Chaos Elite. You know, looking really good right now. Laid to Rest, getting the damage down, finds the Lance, finds the Kestrel, and this is going to be a dead Grumpjaw. Ace going over to Ardent, and with the early game looking so bad for them, it's starting to turn around. They found good damage in that fight, and they may be able to find a return turret. It's going to be close, though.
Yeah, the turret is going to be going down after that Ace comes through. It's not even really going to be much of a struggle for them because there's just so many Ace buff minions. They do so much damage. And so Arden able to get themselves some footing back in this game after Chaos Elite was really able to find a few nice kills, nice setups in that early goings. But Turrets being traded means that we're just pretty much going to be sitting even, and neither of these two teams able to get themselves a clear-cut advantage.
Yeah, and that was very quick back and forth turret for a turret trade there. I was hoping the side of Chaos Elite could get to the turret a little quicker. It was definitely going down. I was hoping to see a little bit of an engage after, though. And they do find Maurice the Beast. The damage that this Grumpjaw and Kestrel can put down, especially with Kestrel having completed the Sorrow Blade, is absolutely massive. And this should be a gold mine going over to them pretty uncontested.
Yeah, it's not going to be a huge payout, just 130 gold each, but it's still better than not getting anything. When you're in a position where you don't really feel like there's too many strides you can make on the map in terms of getting extra gold, sealing with a jungle or anything like that, just picking up a smaller gold mine payout is not a bad option. So the members of Chaos Elite going to be looking to continue farming up, just trying to make sure the gold stays even, and they are doing a really good job of that. I mean, in all honesty, it's a very, very close game here throughout the first 6 minutes. Despite how much action has happened, we got both teams with their tier 1 turrets already destroyed. We've had an ace. We've had 11 kills in the first 6 minutes, but it is usually, if you hear that kind of scoreline, you figure that it's a one-sided affair, but that is not the case. However, in the enemy jungle, Chaos Elite do need to be careful and do back out before the Crystal Sentry is able to get involved.
Yeah, and we're up 1 kill on the side of Ardent, but we're up a gold mine on the side of Chaos Elite. So huge plays coming out of both of these teams, pretty evenly matched. I thought some of the earlier games were going to be a little bit closer, but this one is definitely going to be a back and forth game, unless if Laid to Rest can really find the damage on Kestrel with this Baptiste.
Yeah, if this keeps up, then we're going to be in for a very eventful series, let alone individual games. So right now, it's just going to be both teams trying to jockey for position. Dismiss jumps on in, looking for a stuff, but gets stunned out of it. And so that's not going to be working out. Nice Fearsome Shade is going to send the members of Chaos Elite running. Dat How jumping onto the back line, finds 1 kill. It's going to be Baptiste able to get the second. The Ordained will stun up Prodigy. He's going to try and get over the wall, but doesn't even have a chance to. That is another ace for Ardent.
Another ace for Ardent, and Dat How doing a very good job finding the damage on that backline. Kestrel dropped incredibly early on in that fight, which again, if the Kestrel goes down, the Grumpjaw doesn't really have enough damage when going this utility Grumpjaw to really have any kind of follow-up to the tankiness that this Baptiste, Blackfeather, and Ardent are going to have.
So with the kills now expanding up to 9-5, Ardent with that ace, they were able to steal away a little bit of the jungle, but not really able to gain too much additional ground just because the minion wave was being pushed towards their side of the map. And so it's just kind of a little bit of a reset. The gold is going to be, again, just holding even, holding steady, 18.4 to 18.7. It's neither team able to gain a massive edge. Some good vision getting put down by Chaos Elite. It's going to be helping them to know where their opponents are, where they're trying to make movements, if they do look for another invade, and things of that nature.
And despite everything we've seen, we have an exact tie on the gold right now. So, 9 kills to 5, but we're still not ahead on the side of Ardent right now. So, Chaos Elite still having a lot of potential in this game. We've got some changes to Kestrel in the most recent update, allowing her to sustain in fights a little easier. So if Blue Dawn can find a safe way out of the fight and get a stun down, it's going to be huge. They do find the stun on Maurice the Beast there. Great Githian wall coming out, getting rid of the gauntlet.
And Maurice is going to be low, but so is Blue Dawn. Blue Dawn is going to be the first one to fall. Dismissed, trying to get away, but the Ordained will kill him as he tries to dash out of it. And so 2 quick kills for Ardent. They're starting to find themselves more and more opportunities to win these fights. They can start taking objectives off the tail end of them. They will be in a very good spot. But again, the turret is not going to be under any threat on the side of Chaos Elite because they were managing these waves very well. Gold mine going to be tried to get stolen by Prodigy, but Ardent do secure that one. And with this 11-5 kill lead now, Ardent, even though the gold has just started to swing in their favor, they feel like they've been the team that is in the lead for the last few minutes now.
It does feel that way when this Blackfeather gets onto the backline on this Kestrel. He's done a really good job with blocking the crowd control that this Lance has and the Grumpjaw has. So it's looking really good for the side of Ardent as this Blackfeather starts to scale up. He already has an Aegis, going to block a lot of that damage coming out of Grumpjaw. And Laid to Rest, able to get a lot of splash damage down on Grumpjaw and on Lance. These fights, to me, with Blackfeather scaling the way he is, are going to really start to lean towards Ardent, and it's going to be very difficult and very reliant on the positioning of Chaos Elite if they want to find the kills and want to find the fight that's going to go their way.
And again, just the damage coming out of Laid to Rest already, having the Shattered Glass and the Clockwork, and rebuilding towards a Broken Myth. Just massive amounts of crystal damage that he's able to deal when he throws out those bad mojos, especially once he gets that heroic perk stacked up fully. And he's able to manage those soul shards. It means that he's able to dish out a whole lot of punishment.
Yeah, and providing him a lot of sustain too. We know that the soul shards heal you, and it does scale with crystal power. So in these fights, even if he does take a little bit of damage up front, as he gets those basic attacks down, he heals right back up, which provides some pretty easy, first of all, easy tankiness and free tankiness for this Baptiste.
It does. Well, Chaos Elite, they're just looking for a way to kind of quell the bleeding for now, as they have been getting beaten in pretty much all of the recent team fights. We could be having another one on our hands. Gauntlet goes down, stuns up too, and this is going to be Ardent immediately deleting that Kestrel. The fear into the wall is going to keep Dismissed and Prodigy in place. They get the kill onto Dismissed. Prodigy should be able to get himself out alive to prevent the ace from going over, but once again, Ardent Esports takes the team fight.
Ardent doing a very good job taking these team fights, and the Ordain is working out pretty well. Not necessarily that fight, but when the Grumpjaw does get the swallow down, he doesn't really have anywhere he can go with it. And I don't know if I like the Crystal Grumpjaw in this scenario, and that is a dead Lance, a good stun from Blue Dawn, but man, 600 damage coming out of Laid to Rest. 2 of them, almost enough to get the kill. And that is going to be a dead Blue. Oh my God, he manages to make it out. That is a massive, play out of Blue Dawn there, blocking the damage from this this Blackfeather, who, cleans up the rest of the fight, but does not find the ace.
Yeah, heads up being a 2-for-2 trade when all is said and done. Just again, that play from Blue Dawn, able to use the reflex block to prevent the killing blow from Dat Hao from coming through, was absolutely huge. Otherwise, we would have been looking at yet another Ardent Esports ace, and they would have gotten only 1 member killed as a result. So excellent job by the side of Chaos Elite to minimize the damage. They still are very much on the back foot, but they are at least able to find an even trade.
And an even trade that, we're still not at a gold advantage for either team right now, despite the kills, Well, I guess with clearing that wave, they do take about 1,000 gold lead, but at 15, 14 minutes into the game, that's not a very huge lead, so there still is some hope for the side of Chaos Elite. They just, again, have to find the right fight and really capitalize on it when they can.
We may be getting an opportunity for that fight right now, as everyone is here. Everyone has all their cooldowns. Are they going to actually pull the trigger and look for it? Some preemptive damage getting thrown out by Laid to Rest. He still doesn't have that Broken Myth, though, so not going to be stacking up, just getting some good damage out there. Here comes the Gauntlet. It's not going to get any stuns, but it will keep a couple members inside. Meanwhile, Dat Hao charging onto Blue Dawn, looking for the kill. Prodigy is low as well, but the Crystal Sentry's getting involved, and all of a sudden, Chaos Elite find themselves a kill. They are going to lose 1 as well. Prodigy and Dismissed still fighting, but Laid to Rest is so healthy. That's going to be a 2nd kill. Dismissed, the only member of Chaos Elite that is left alive. they're going to leave the Crystal Sentry as well, leaving it with just over half health so it doesn't recall to refresh its health pool. And instead, it is just going to be a 2-for-1 in favor of Ardent.
2-for-1 in favor of Ardent, and I do want to point out that this Blackfeather, instead of building into armor to really tank these Kestrel Glimmer shots, has built into a Slumbering Husk. Now, this can work out well because it does negate a little more of the upfront damage, but as a fight goes on and that proc is used up, it doesn't really provide you with much of anything to follow suit. So if the side of Chaos Elite can really stretch these fights out and burn out the cooldown of that Slumbering Husk, that's going to be their opportunity to kill .How when he dives to the backline.
All right, so they are going to be looking for, once again, a fight right here around the middle of the map. This is where Ardent has actually tried to start up a lot of these fights. There's going to be an Ordained onto Prodigy, so he's going to be kind of stuck in place for a moment. Get some good damage out again, looking for opportunities. Gauntlet goes down, just going to keep everyone kind of inside of it. RN Prodigy is going to get feared. All three members get feared, but it's not going to be enough for a kill. Even though Prodigy is super, super low, Ardent doesn't want to risk going in underneath that Crystal Sentry again.
Yeah, you know, we definitely seen that Crystal Sentry putting in some work in that last fight. You know, Ardent still won out on the fight, but if the Crystal Sentry wasn't there, then they may not have lost out on their Blackfeather, so could have maybe capitalized on a little bit more objective control. And here goes another very, very aggressive fight. Kestrel dropping dangerously low, and it gets taken off, and all of the members of Ardent still looking incredibly healthy.
Yeah, it's going to be dismissed, stun buff by the Ordained, but they have gotten the damage down that is going to force Chaos Elite to have to be careful. And with that one kill, that's enough for them to feel comfortable and to start up this Kraken. Grumpjaw and Lance still around, but again, they are low. Will they go in to try and make this steal happen? Ardent is being very careful around this Kraken. They're going to be looking for an Ordained onto the Lance. They land it. Now they're looking for this fight. Kraken's going to stay involved this whole time too, which is really nice because it means it's not going to reset as they get the first kill. Dismissed will be chased off by How, and Kraken will get unleashed as the one-shot, one-kill gets blocked by Maurice. Ardent finally able to get this objective. 19-8 on the kills. But again, it's just so impressive to see a kill score that high. But then you look at the gold, and it's only about 2,000 to 3,000 gold that separates these teams.
Yeah, which is, again, the gold has been pretty irrelevant all game. It's been so close on the gold. There's never been more than, you know, a 2,000 gold lead for either team. It's been really back and forth, but the fights have just been constantly being found by Ardent. They're finding the damage on Kestrel, and once that Kestrel's out of the picture, Grumpjaw has a lot of burst damage, but doesn't have any way to follow up.
Well, right now they're going to be looking for this damage on the choke point turret. Kraken's actually taken a lot of beating already, but this Mist will be able to get himself out. Nice little stun from the active camo, but is it going to be enough? All of Chaos Elite are going onto their Sanctuary to heal up. Looks like Ardent are going to try and take this turret and maybe look for a fight here. Gauntlet gets canceled by a stuffed. Excellent job by Dismissed. Ardent still sticking around, perhaps looking for this turret. No, they're going to actually back off. Kraken goes down, and it's actually Maurice getting caught. How charges on in. They've got a couple members super low, but not low enough to find the kills. Ardent not able to break through that first Famed Crystal turret, although they did at least get through the choke point with the Kraken.
Yeah, and we got to give a lot of credit to How on this Blackfeather. He's dodged a lot of stuns by using that Rose offensive properly, and it's really been huge because the Kestrel's defense is typically get down your active camo, your weapon power, you can use it in a fight, but when the Blackfeather is able to bait out that stun and just get to the backline, Kestrel is so susceptible to dive damage that if you lose out on that stun, this Baptiste and Blackfeather are just able to lock you down incredibly easily. And, you know, I was a little skeptical at first. I really liked the composition that Chaos Elite had pulled together here, but it just doesn't look like they have the disengaged potential that they need with the aggression that Ardent's able to put out.
All right, so with the Kraken doing a bit of work and getting that base open. Ardent still seems to be winning every single fight. Now we have a broken myth for Laid to Rest and infusions for all 3 members. There is no infusion on Dismissed at the moment, so if a fight were to break out right now, Ardent would have a huge advantage. I'm not sure if they're aware of the fact that Dismissed does not have the infusion. They could very easily look for a fight. Instead, they're going to rotate up to the lane. This will give Dismissed an opportunity to get down to the shop to pick up that infusion, because he does have the gold for it, but hasn't done so just yet. Prodigy's infusion just wore off, but Prodigy does not have the gold to buy one. So there's the infusion for Dismissed. Kraken has respawned. Ardent playing this very, very safely, being very cautious about, even with this huge lead that they have in terms of kills.
Huge lead in terms of kills, and Kestrel has finally completed that second monocle. That's going to really start to ramp up her damage. But again, this Blackfeather has played it so well, where he's baiting out the stun, and the follow-up damage from the Glimmer shots are getting negated out by the Slumbering Husk. So if Chaos Elite can find a fight here, they have a lot of damage, where even if they only get 1 or 2 kills, they should be able to take this Kraken pretty uncontested, so I don't want to count them out yet. But if .How continues to play incredibly well on this Blackfeather like we've seen all game, this should be Ardent's game to win.
It absolutely should be, but like I said, they're still just playing this very cautiously. They don't want to run the risk of making a big mistake in a team fight that could cost them the game, but I feel like they may almost be a mistake in and of itself. They do get a little bit of damage on Dismissed. Maybe gonna look for a fight here, but again, just kind of backing off. I just want to see them. They have such a large lead. They have to be aware of the fact that they are very much ahead of their opponents when it comes to the actual just team fight execution. And I would really like to see them just go ahead and capitalize on that. Just look to start off a fight and use .How and Laid to Rest to get that burst damage down. They're setting up. They're going to get spotted. Gauntlet will catch out Dismissed. .How jumps over, trying to get onto Blue Dawn. The fear will go through. Dismissed almost takes down Laid to Rest while his stuff was on Maurice, so he couldn't use the fountain. And just like that, disaster has struck for Ardent as they lose out on 2 members. Very long death timers. This is going to be a Kraken for the side of Chaos Elite.
It is most likely going to be a Kraken unless if Maurice the Beast is able to pull off some miraculous steal. What went really well in that fight for the side of Chaos Elite was Kestrel was able to find a couple Glimmer shots onto the Baptiste, who has no defense. And Maurice the Beast coming in a little too early. That is an ace for the side of Chaos Elite. Still no gold lead, really, to speak of on either side. But this has got to feel good for Chaos Elite, finding the ace, finding this Kraken. It looks like they're going to hold it long enough for Kestrel to push this turret and then make it back to shop. I think this is really smart. That way, when the Kraken does march down the lane, you're able to go as a team. If they can find another good fight like that, then Chaos Elite can still win this game. This Kestrel played that last fight really well. Finally has the metal jacket to prevent some damage from this Blackfeather. It's going to be all about this Kestrel's positioning. If you can find the damage into Baptiste and kill him early on in the fight the way we just did, then there's not much just the Blackfeather can do.
So now they're going to be pushing in with this Kraken. It's about to approach the choke point turret. Chaos Elite with a big chance to perhaps turn this game fully around. It was looking like it was going to be Ardent for so long, but now this choke pointer is just getting absolutely melted. Gauntlet goes down. It gets displaced a bit thanks to the Lance, and Chaos Elite are able to back away. No fountain used. Now they charge right back on in. They're going to find a good bit of damage, but Dismissed getting taken down very low, as well as the Prodigy. Dismissed is going to fall. Ardent finds 1 kill. Can they find any more? Ordained on the Prodigy will keep him in place. There's nowhere for Blue Dawn to go either, as they get 2 kills. 1 more bad mojo should be enough. They're going to throw out the Ordained for good measure, and that's an ace with only 1 turret remaining, or 1.5, I suppose. It's going to be Arden looking to race the Kraken. Kraken has just gotten through 1 turret on their base, but is not very likely to have enough speed to finish off the game before Ardent can do the same on the other side. They get one turret. They're working on the second with more than enough time. They will destroy the second turret before Kraken destroys theirs, and now they are on to the Crystal, and Ardent nearly threw that game away, but do end up securing the victory.
Yeah, what a close game with that base race there at the end. For a majority of that game, it was looking really good for Ardent, but again, we cannot count out Chaos Elite. When they do find the right fight, they really capitalize on the objective play, and that is an incredibly smart thing that we haven't seen all the teams today bring to the table. If you clean up those kills, you have to push something objective-based to really make it worth it. When the gold lead is negligible like the game we just saw, you can't just give up and not do anything.
Yeah, we see this so often, guys, is when you are going down with a Kraken, it really exposes you positionally. You know, you're pushing right down the lane where a team can be patient under their own turret and then re-engage onto you, get the advantage, and that is exactly what happened. A lot of times people feel like with the Kraken, that is a sure way to win, but you have to play it right. Honestly, the only thing that Chaos Elite needed to not give up there was an ace. The only thing, and unfortunately just not well positioned, overextended. We saw Blue Dawn, once he realized they were going to lose those fights, tried to get away, but at that point, the aggression from that Blackfeather. Blackfeather's able to put that trail once he gets some damage onto you, once he gets those heart drops, and the whole team is accelerated. They are able to move much quicker down the lane and to chase down that Kestrel, and that was really a problem.
It was, and again, we got to attribute a lot of that game to .how. You know, there was a pretty big swing when they did find the ace for Chaos Elite, but .how for a most part of that game did a really good job baiting out a lot of crowd control that the side of Chaos Elite had built. You know, they had that Grumpjaw, they had that Lance, and they had the Kestrel, and they burned a lot of cooldowns trying to keep Blackfeather off the backline. So you really got to try to prioritize your targets of these crowd control. When Blackfeather's at play, he's a very mobile assassin that blocks that crowd control. Maybe you got to try to find a different fight. You got to try to find that Baptiste on the backline. Kestrel can go invisible, and instead of kiting backwards, maybe push through and find that damage.
Absolutely, yeah, that is true. Nice pickup on the Slumbering Husk there. I wanted to mention that we actually saw a couple times Kestrel tried to burst down the Blackfeather, but the Blackfeather Slumbering Husk was active, and we saw how wait to use his on point until after the Slumbering Husk got procced, and it just gave him an additional barrier. It was really hard to get that burst damage on him early.
It was, and that's why I really would have liked to have seen when Blue Dawn used that active camo instead of just continuing to fight backwards, because the Blackfeather just kept pushing at that point. When Kestrel was fighting backwards, the Blackfeather just kept diving, kept baiting out that crowd control. If instead you would have played a little bit of a mind game, dropped that active camo, and boots past the fight, you could have found that Baptiste on the backline who had no defense, just a reflex block at 25 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, shoulda, wouldas, and unfortunately, Chaos Elite really putting up a good fight. I'm honest, guys, this is a really good-looking team, considering they have already taken a fight down and taken out a top seed team, and now are taking it to Ardent, and that was surprisingly close. This is one of the closest series we've had yet. So definitely really impressed with how Chaos Elite's playing. A 22nd seed, guys, way below, I think, expectations, coming in here and impressing all of us. They're not out of the thick yet, though. We are getting into game number 2. The draft has started, so we're going to get right into this as we see Chaos Elite taking on Ardent Esports.
And the Grumpjaw Baron coming off very, very early. This has been, for the most part, a pretty consistent thing this season. The first pick, Vox, coming out of the side of Chaos Elite here. Vox has been a dominant hero for several patches now with, again, the updates to Poison Shiv, Vox's ability to get a lot of attacks down incredibly quickly. This is a really strong pick, and I think this is a pretty risky Blackfeather pick here, because Vox in the late game can deal with the Blackfeather really well. Maurice the Beast on this Arden, though, is just a massive, massive threat. He plays it so well. He's very, very key with who he targets with the Vanguards, and you know, another Lance pickup. And I haven't felt the presence of Lance this patch that we have in the previous patches.
I mean, he has a strong presence. One of the powers of Lance, and especially into an Arden even, is the ability in those tight areas, in those tight channels on the map. You can really redirect the fight. You can get a lot of CC. But one of the things actually that, if you're, and Arden did a little bit of this, is just allow the fights to be on their terms in many of those cases. Where we did see Chaos Elite perform really well in the last game is when they did find a few fights on their terms. But those are too far and few in between, and it allowed Arden, of course, obviously, to get that edge, eventually getting the game. So the draft is done. Taka comes out from late to rest right here at the end. That's an interesting pickup into the Samuel Vox.
I like the Taka into the Samuel. Taka provides a lot of heavy engage that can really... We discussed Samuel has that huge level 2 spike, but then after that level 2 spike, he kind of stays the same until the late game with a really heavily scaling late game. Taka is one of the few heroes that can really make it difficult for Samuel in the mid game. And both Taka and Blackfeather are really able to bait out a lot of crowd control with the Kaiten and with the Rose offensive. So if they're able to do the same thing they did last game, get to that backline and clean up a kill very early on in the fight, that's the win condition for this double assassin comp, and with the vanguards from Arden, it should be pretty easy for them to do so.
Absolutely. Well, we're into game number 2. It is Chaos Elite on the A side going into Arden Esports. Tasty Bacon and Denominate, take it away.
All right, so here we go. Sorry about that, Denominate. We are going to be getting underway what could potentially be our final game of the day if Arden Esports are able to close out this series 2-0. Taka into Samuel is a very good counter. We'll see if Laid to Rest can make it work against Dismissed.
Yeah, and with the aggression that we saw out of Ardent last game, I definitely expect this Taka to realize that he can really capitalize early on and push that aggression. Now, at level 2, it's going to be difficult. But as we get into level 6 for Taka to have that X-Retsu, that's when he's really going to start to take off. And the damage that Crystal Taka can bring in the mid-game is absolutely massive into this really squishy comp that we have. Taka's finding a kill down in this.
Couldn't be found in the jungle. Laid to Rest and Maurice able to find that kill onto Dismissed as he was working towards that Ancient Treant. So now they're going to be able to go ahead and take that objective for themselves. Nice job by Arden, able to start off strong.
Yeah, starting off strong, and Samuel did hit level 2 in the middle of that fight, but it was just a little too late into the fight. He dropped the Drifting Dark, but the damage was done, and Taka was able to seal his fate and really avoid a lot of damage that was about to come out. So Taka capitalizes here on getting that bonus gold that's going to help him scale into the Samuel better. But if Samuel makes it to the late game, he can really provide a lot of damage into this triple melee composition with that splash damage from the Empowered Malice and Verdicts. So if they can make it to the late game, I can see this Samuel really taking off.
Yeah, it's going to be a matter of if they can get to that point where Samuel can start dishing out tons of damage, although there is a plenty of dive on the side of Arden between Blackfeather and Taka. Once that Drifting Dark comes out, they can just try and jump onto him and prevent him from being able to get those Empowered Malice and Verdicts off to great effect. So we'll have to see how it plays out as we approach the 3-minute mark. It's really just that first blood, the only thing that sort of separates these two teams at the moment.
Yeah, and they do have a lot of dive potential, but once Samuel completes the Frostburn, the Eve of Harvest, and the Broken Myth, when he drops that Drifting Dark, it has a natural lifesteal for all enemies in it. When coupled with the Eve healing him up and the splashing Malice and Verdicts, even if they do dive him, he's going to have a lot of sustain. It's really going to be if Lance can do a good job keeping Taka at bay, and so far we've seen Ardent play really well into the Lance from last game, so if we can see them keep that up this game, then it's going to be really difficult for Chaos Elite to find anything here.
And they are definitely going to be looking to continue to be aggressive, maybe finding some good damage onto Dismissed here. Throws out that Drifting Dark, trying to just dissuade them from continuing the chase. Does get some good damage answered, but not going to be enough for either side to pick up another kill. So Ardent will just retreat back into their side of the jungle. Dat Hao in the lane on this Black Feather, sitting on 24 CS, is trailing Blue Dawn, who's up at 32 and already has the Poison Shiv completed. But Blue Dawn went straight for the Poison Shiv. No extra items purchased, no defense, nothing. So they will have the opportunity, if they can jump onto this, onto the Vox, there is a chance for Ardent to be able to find a nice kill there.
Maurice the Beast again on this Ardent just so well with his timing on the Vanguards has negated a lot of damage that could have come out on Dat Hao here. So if Vox and Samuel are able to scale late enough here, there's a lot of potential for the side of Chaos Elite. But I think the side of Ardent just ramps up a lot quicker. And you know, with the fact that we already have a fountain complete on Maurice the Beast and not quite there yet on RN Prodigy, I think this next fight could be huge. And if Taka is able to just get farther and farther ahead of Samuel, then it's going to make it really difficult for them to make it to the late game.
All right, so with Maurice the Beast holding the lane for his teammates, they're both Dat Hao and Laid to Rest going to be going through the jungle as a duo, making sure they get as much gold onto the carries as possible. And Maurice is going to have to be a little bit careful. He loses a good chunk of health there in order to hold the lane, but he's going to be okay, especially because he does have that Iron Guard contract. So as Dat Hao farms up these minions, he will be topping himself up.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefit of being a melee laner that has this Poison Shiv build, because you get that bonus healing when you are a melee hero. And it really works out well, but he's gone into a Serpent's Mask, so you know, maybe not as much upfront damage and utility that we'd like to see out of a Black Feather, but we also may have a disconnect here on RN Prodigy.
We're going to go ahead and get a pause out to take care of that. Give him a moment to hopefully get the connection sorted. It is, every player is responsible for their own connection, as we always explain when we get a pause like this. But while we are respecting the game, we do have the ability to pause it, and so we will use that functionality just to ensure as fair of an experience as possible.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of respect coming out of Ardent here. You know, they understand that sometimes connection just really can be an issue. They just ran past, let them live, give them a chance to come back after the pause. So really respectable play out of them for their you know, for their time.
So while we wait for this pause, I'm going to take a quick glance down at the CS numbers while we have a chance. 50 CS for Dat Hao to now the 49 of Blue Dawn. So Dat Hao has done a really good job of catching up, as he was behind in CS a bit. We are going to get unpaused. Looks like everyone does seem to be moving around now. So we're all set on that front, which is good to see. Dat Hao actually picking up an early infusion. I mean, he's only level 5 right now, so I'm going to be really curious to see when and how they use that infusion, as Maurice, again, going to be trying to hold the lane, not quite going to be able to prevent 2 minions from having to be taken by himself.
Yeah, but he did get the ambient gold onto Dat Hao on that second one, so not too terrible. Definitely lost out on the one, but you know, really good job gold sharing. Losing out on 1 minion is worth getting the shared gold of the backs. So we do have the Frostburn complete now on Samuel, and this is really huge, because if you get that splash damage down on your Malice and Verdicts, you can slow the entire enemy team, and it's really going to prevent a lot of engage that Ardent has. There is a lot of dive potential, but the Samuel, when he has those empowered Malice and Verdicts, just plainly outranges these assassins.
All right, so right now Ardent pushing up in the lane. They've got themselves a small gold lead, about 1,000 gold in their favor. And all 3 members in the lane, looks like they're going to want to try and push up, do a little bit of damage, but Prodigy doing a really good job of holding them at bay and waiting for his team to get back here and catch up. Maurice is going to get rooted, but not going to have the rest of the team to really follow up and look for a kill.
Yeah, and the Mist finding a lot of damage on the Taka. You know, the Taka isn't typically pretty squishy. He does heal up with his Kaku, but those empowers Malice and Verdicts hitting, you know, huge damage. And when Ardent does decide to dive, it's going to give a lot of sustain over to Samuel once he completes this Eve. I almost wouldn't be surprised if we see the Eve completed before the Broken Myth in this case, just because you have such a massive heal potential.
So down in the jungle, once again, it's Ardent spending time with both the carries, clearing out the jungle camps. This is something that really goes a long way towards accelerating the rate of your 2 carries, getting themselves into their tier 3 items, a breaking point, and now an infusion for Laid to Rest right after that how it used his. So you have to assume Ardent is going to be looking for a fight as they jump in on the Gauntlet. Does not stun up the target they wanted. It only gets Prodigy, but they are still able to find the kill regardless. Deflex block can be used on the Oblivion. There's the Fountain in order to keep that How alive. So they do get 1 kill out of this, but I don't really think they're going to be able to find too much else, though it looks like they want to maybe think about this gold miner. It's actually going to be Dismissed that ends up starting it. Laid to Rest jumping right onto him. They know they have a pretty good opportunity here, but going into the Crystal Sentry is risky. Dismissed going to try and chase them back out. Gold miner still being worked on, but eventually Ardent is going to fully back off.
Yeah, especially as those health bars get really low and Vox coming in with that tension bow proc, it can really be a dangerous situation. In this mid game, that tension bow does a lot of damage, and you know, here we're going to see Blue Dawn push this wave into lane, and again, just good gold sharing out of the side of Ardent here, and that house should be able to make it up to lane before too much of this wave is lost.
So this is going to be an option for Ardent to again look for fight. They still have these infusions active. They once again jump onto the Vox there, but not able to get the kill. Blue Dawn is able to get himself out to safety this time around. Prodigy will take some damage, but Ardent, it's really interesting to me that they're going for these fights without really pushing up the wave, because even if they were to get that kill, they don't have many options to then follow up with. Like, they're not going to be able to get that turret because they don't have minions there. They start up the gold miner, but they don't commit to it because the rest of Chaos Elite are here to try and contest. They're going to continue poking at it. And this time it looks like it will be going down to at least someone. The Oblivion almost steals it away, but it does go the way of Ardent.
Yeah, and good Crucible timing out of Maurice the Beast there. We do now have a reflex block on Blackfeather, but we do not have one on Taka. And Maurice taking a lot of damage here, but not quite enough engage to follow up from Chaos Elite here.
So, well, up in the lane once more. I mean, the infusions have now timed out. Really, all that Ardent was able to get with those infusions was, I mean, I guess they did get the payout with the infusions, but 2 kills, actually 1 kill, sorry, because Blue Dawn didn't go down the second time. That Gauntlet is going to catch Blue Dawn, and that's going to be a kill. Excellent job. Ardent Prodigy looks to be having connection issues once again, unfortunately. Now he's moving again, so hopefully he gets that connection issue sorted out. Otherwise, Chaos Elite will be dropping down to the elimination bracket, very likely with a 2-on-3 situation, but the turret is going to be getting taken down very low. Maurice is just tanking up these Malice and Verdicts. They destroy the turret, turn their attention onto Prodigy for now, but they should be able to just back away, happy with the objective.
Happy with the objective indeed. That is 900 gold as well as positional advantage. And, you know, we didn't see it last game, but we're starting to see a gold lead accrue this game. You know, sitting at 4,000 gold advantage, you know, it's looking a lot better for Ardent this game. You know, some connection issues may be a little to attribute to that, but Ardent overall just playing really well, you know, capitalizing on the stun in that last fight from Maurice the Beast with that gauntlet wall. Absolutely huge decision, push the turret immediately. Ardent's looking really good, and this is a team that we've seen have varying success. We saw them look really good in VIS Pro, had some tough challenges that they were able to take down. This could be the season for them.
And I mean, I would say that, but there's at the same time we've seen other challenger teams be able to easily dismantle their opponents. And Ardent, while they have a very clear lead in terms of the gold right now and the fighting, like, they aren't playing super decisive in my opinion, but now they're going to be a little bit more decisive, jumping on in underneath this turret. They get the kill onto Blue Dawn. Dismissed is going to be trying to get some damage out, but he is going to melt thanks to laid to rest on this CP Taka. The gauntlet will keep them underneath this turret, but Ardent Prodigy may be the next one to be in trouble. Chasing him onto the Sanctuary. They're going to eventually let him go, but they have some minions here so that they can actually get out. I don't know how those minions got that deep under the second turret, but Ardent is going to be able to turn around, take the tier 2 turret here, and will then back away. So finding big advantages now in the last couple minutes.
Yeah, and you know, again, we're really abusing this early game Crystal Taka, able to get to that backline. We see a lot of defense prioritized out of Blue Dawn already, having an Aegis complete before that third offensive item, which looks to be working on a breaking point. That Eve does come out second for Dismissed here, but we really need to get that Broken Myth down, is where that splash damage is really going to start to scale heavily. And ideally, Maurice the Beast is able to get a little more shield to really frontline some of that damage.
They are going to be looking now to rotate once again. Ardent Prodigy looking for vision to clear out, but not really going to be finding much. Can be caught here, but just going to roll over the wall to safety. Ardent, meanwhile, with their 5 kills and a 5,000 gold lead, are going to be looking for some more. Perhaps Prodigy will join the rest of his team as he rolls over the wall. And so Ardent just backs off. Laid to rest will start up this gold miner. Now that they've cleared out all the vision there, they should be able to take this one pretty easily, especially when you have someone who can solo the miner. You don't really have to worry about it being obvious that that's what you're going for. So nice little gold payout going the way of Ardent. They're going to steal away this mid Treant as well, trying to take every little thing they can off the map.
Yeah, and you know, they're really pushing their advantage while they have it. You know, these fights have gone so drastically on their side that they feel comfortable just pretty much doing whatever they want right now. And this particular Challenger series to me has just been super exciting. I can't wait to see these games going forward. We have a lot of really, really high potential teams that this is going to get to be a pretty big bloodbath here in the near future.
They are going to be looking for an opportunity perhaps to go in. Every single time they've been looking to just blow up Blue Dawn first and then turn their attention elsewhere. Maurice is going to be taking a lot of damage. That How is waiting over the wall, doesn't realize that he's actually spotted in that location thanks to a nicely placed scout trap by Prodigy. But How Ardent, again, just trying to keep this pressure up, trying to keep themselves positioned on the farther side of the map so that the members of Chaos Elite cannot get an opportunity to try and make a play. Kraken is going to be started. It gets pulled into the brush. Prodigy is going to spot that this is going on now. And well, they are going to be actually leaving the Kraken and looking for an opportunity to jump onto the carries once Prodigy was so far forward. Lots of damage on the Blue Dawn, but Blue Dawn survives. A beautiful Gauntlet and Oblivion coming out, but it's still going to be Blue Dawn falling. Dat How and Maurice are going to be low, so they have to run, but they found the kill that they were looking for. Dat How playing with the fire a little bit here, but has another Rose Offensive, does get rooted, but Dismissed cannot get in deep enough to try and make an impact onto this Black Feather. Another root, and that's going to be a block getting used. Will it be enough to keep him alive? They've actually now got the position onto Dismissed in deep in the jungle. And this should be another kill. The execute comes through, and Ardent finds their 7th kill of the game.
Yeah, that fight was looking really good for the side of Chaos Elite there, but Dat How and this Black Feather, both games back-to-back, just looking really, really good. His positioning and choices in these fights are looking, you know, pretty amazing. And, you know, now that we have Blue Dawn completing this breaking point, these fights can start to shift a little bit, but this Samuel is incredibly squishy still. He did have some defense, and he's sold it to try to get this Broken Myth build now.
Well, Kraken is going to be going very, very low, very close to being captured. Will there be a steal attempt coming out? Wait for it, goes out. Nearly actually steals that away. Gauntlet was used. Didn't catch anyone. It was mostly just to try and keep them out at bay. And now they're going to look to try and engage perhaps, but Dat How going in deep on his own will get stunned, and the wall drops very, very low. Fountain is going to come out to keep him alive, but laid to rest will drop as the Oblivion falls. Scout Trap's going to do some damage, but it is Chaos Elite that end up with the ace. just as Kraken is getting into the lane. And so 2 members alive to try and stop this, but I think Kraken should be able to get 1 turret out of the deal at least.
Yeah, Vox does have a lot of hero damage as the fight goes on, but he does not have a lot of objective damage. So this should be a turret. Definitely not going to be 2. Probably go down before it even gets a hit on the second turret. They're doing a good job getting this damage down though, and trading Ace and 1 turret trading 1 turret for Ace and Kraken. That's a pretty good gold advantage that Chaos Elite really needed to find.
So Kraken does get 1 turret out of this though, and it is the choke point turret. That is a very important turret for Ardent to have down. However, like you said, it was a great fight by Chaos Elite, even being down by a pretty hefty amount of gold. They were able to get themselves the ace. Maybe a little bit risky by Ardent to go ahead and go fighting in the Sentry, and Dat Hao went very deep all on his own. But you got to figure, if Ardent sticks together, they should be able to find these fights. Look at how many scout traps they have just put down in their side of the tri-brush. Like, that seems a little bit excessive to me, but I guess when you have a contraption, there's no such thing as excessive numbers of scout traps to be putting down. And so Ardent, knowing that they only have 2 turrets left, going to be playing very aggressive. I am stunned that they didn't throw out the gauntlet to try and catch Blue Dawn when they spotted him out there. He was completely on his own.
Yeah, definitely a questionable call, but not having vision on the team and seeing how that last fight went in the enemy jungle, it looks like they're trying to play a little more cautious. And Blue Dawn does have 5 items completed now, and we do have the Broken Myth completed on this Samuel now too, so that splash damage is going to start to hurt more and more as the fight goes on. And at the same time, this Vox is going to start scaling out these breaking point stacks really, really quickly. So we're at that point where Samuel's starting to scale out of control and Taka is starting to fall a little bit off.
So with everyone pushing up in the lane here, maybe Ardent going to look for another opportunity to find a fight. They're going to actually just rotate down, clearing out vision, trying to make sure that this Taka, when he goes into his Kaku, will be able to truly be undetected. However, Prodigy is going to move up, clear out some more vision. Kraken respawns. Looks like Ardent is trying to set up an ambush, trying to set up this party brush here. But I don't think Chaos Elite is going to have any part of that, as they're just clearing out their jungle and immediately recalling. Ardent has no idea. So they're just going to be standing here for a while longer. Very exciting gameplay to behold.
Yeah, very exciting gameplay.
Very patient. It's kind of impressive how patient they're being here. Like, they're fine, and then they just get spotted by a flare. Like, at this level of play, you have to know that brush is going to get flared out by your opponents at this stage of the game. Like, come on.
I mean, maybe just hoping for a little bit of a mistake there. You know, we were just discussing this Taka's falling off, especially with the build prep that he's gone. His only damage is the Shatterglass, and then, you know, the questionable damage that comes with the clockwork from that Shatterglass damage is what, 25%? So, you know, as both these... Yeah, both these Aegises are complete now, so the Taka really isn't as effective as he had been in the mid game.
Chaos Elite gonna get triple stun from the gauntlet, but where's the rest of Ardent? No follow-up whatsoever. They were too far back. Now they're gonna be jumping in. They've gotten a lot of damage onto Dismissed, but not enough to find the kill. Samuel will survive just by the skin of his teeth. Now he's going to be trying to find the kill into Dat Hao. They do get Dat Hao, and Ardent once again having things sort of implode on them as they wait this out for so long. And when the trigger's finally pulled by Maurice the Beast, the rest of the team's simply not there to follow up on the opportunity.
They're not, and they almost found the kill on Samuel last fight. Not quite. He almost actually bled out from the Taka ult. But, you know, Chaos Elite finding a fantastic fight. Laid to rest, really risky here with the vision that they have. Looks like he's just going to opt to clear some wave, but this should be a Kraken be picked up by Chaos Elite here, and really, really big swing here as this game goes on. And again, just such a greedy Taka build to try to go with this Shatterglass and the Clockwork. And it now looks like he's going to get found out here. And that should be a dead Taka. If they can find one more attack. There it is. And that is now a 50-second death timer for this Taka while Kraken marches down the lane. Fortunately, Ardent does have all their turrets still, so it's going to take a lot of damage. They definitely can't win here.
Yeah, not going to be a game-ending play, but Chaos Elite definitely starting to make strides to come back into this one. They get that first turret very quickly. Kraken barely taking any damage, and now going to be pushing onto the tier 2. That's going to fall fast as well. Still about 10 seconds on Taka's respawn. Kraken has lost maybe a fifth of her health as she gets onto this choke point. This is where things may start to get dicey. Once Laid to Rest comes back up, this turret is going to be going down. Nice job with the Oblivion just for zoning, just to force Ardent away. And Ardent going to have to focus on this Kraken instead of trying to chase down the kills. So big turnaround from Chaos Elite, all of a sudden getting themselves back into this game. I mean, they were down by 6,000 or 7,000 gold, and now the gold deficit has shrunk to just being about 1,000 in favor of Ardent. So Chaos Elite really able to find these fights in the late game.
And again, a lot of that is attributed to this Taka build. It was very, very greedy towards the mid game with that Shatterglass first and then the Clockwork. They weren't able to close out the game in a timely enough fashion, though, and now it's really starting to hurt them because the Samuel and the Vox continue to ramp up, and the Taka continues to ramp downwards. So if Ardent can find a perfect fight here, they may still be able to close it out, but these fights are looking so good for Chaos Elite here that this should be their game as long as nobody gets caught out.
So we'll see how this is going to play out. Ardent in position in the middle of the map. They have the zone control here with the vision, but not going to be able to keep that for long as they rotate up to the lane to get these minions pushing. I mean, it's all going to come down to really one fight. We're at that point. We're at the stage of the game almost 25 minutes in where one team fight will end this game, assuming that it's a decisive team fight. And so as infusions are picked up for both sides, we're going to be seeing all 6 players with infusions. Vision, again, going to be so important around this Kraken pit. Kraken will be respawning fairly shortly here. Ardent trying to make sure that they are the team that is in position for when that happens.
Yeah, and I think it's really smart out of Chaos Elite here. You know, last game we seen they may have been a little too aggressive with that Kraken, and it ended up costing them the game. You know, they were at a situation where all they had to do is not get aced, and they either won the game or at least didn't lose it. And you know, they played it really smart there. They knew Taka was coming up. They knew they had burned a lot of their cooldowns. Huge fight coming out here. They do find RN Prodigy.
So quick to take down Prodigy, even with the Crystal Sentry being there to try and help. Now they're going to look to start the Kraken, but they have to be careful. The damage dealers of the Chaos Elite are still up and are still at full health without really many tools to try and prevent them from getting blown up. Kraken's going to get started now that they've healed up a little bit. They don't really have the best of vision in order to spot out anyone trying to steal this away, so they do have to be careful. Here comes Chaos Elite. Kraken still under halfway captured, but now going to be getting a little bit closer. Chaos Elite trying to get some preliminary damage down, keeping the members of Ardent uncomfortable at least. This Kraken is going to come so close. Here we go. There goes the Oblivion, but it doesn't steal it. Gauntlet will stun up the Vox, and Blue Dawn is going to drop. Ardent may have just secured themselves the victory with that Gauntlet. Now Dismissed is going to be trying to do what he can, but the damage is too much. Dismissed will end up falling eventually to Ardent Gaming, and with Kraken pushing in and only Prodigy alive to try and defend for the next 40 seconds, this should be the game.
That was such a risky call there, and that really just cost Chaos Elite the game. They could have very easily given up the Kraken and chose a better 3v3 fight and then just base raced for the win, and instead they try to get greedy and take the Kraken, and they really paid for it there. And this should be a win going over to Ardent. The death timers are just a little too long.
So one turret down, Prodigy doing what he can. Blue Dawn is going to respawn, but the turret is already gone. Nice stun though. Gauntlet is going to keep Blue Dawn at bay, and I just don't think they have it in them. The turret, or the crystal, is so low. Kraken's still plenty healthy, and Ardent Gaming will take this 2-0. It was a very, very close and hard-fought affair. You gotta give credit to Chaos Elite, but unfortunately for them, just falling a little bit short in both games.
A little bit short in both games, but this might not be the last time we see them. They did look good towards the late game in both games, so they have a chance here still to play through the losers bracket, and we could see them again. It's just they're really going to have to pull together their decision making and see if they can, you know, really try to crack it down as a team.
Yeah, Chaos Elite, 22nd seeded team, really giving Ardent a run for their money. 27-minute game, and you know, 7-11. That's a great score line because it really shows how close this game was. It was really back and forth for most of it. Ardent does finally find that break. Actually, it really was on the back of that kill on Ardent Prodigy. You guys called it. That gauntlet set them up for the win. Ardent Prodigy was not ready. It's unfortunate for him. He was actually just laying vision down on their side of the shop, thinking he could just put that there and get away, and he got caught with an ambush. That is heartbreaking because that turned the game right in favor of Ardent.
Yeah, and again, I think if they would have just gave up the Kraken and chose that 3v3 fight, they were winning the fights for the most part when it was a 3v3. You know, the Samuel and Vox had really started to scale up, and there just wasn't enough damage followed up by Ardent. So in the future, I'd like to see them, if they're in that scenario again, give up the Kraken, pick your fight, and then just push to win.
Yeah, no, it was risky. What Ardent did trying to secure that Kraken was very risky. I agree, they should have just gone for the fight. And both teams really a little bit struggling with how they secure Krakens. None of them are really able to do it cleanly with no contest. But hey, Ardent gets the win, 2-0. They are moving on to the next round. Our last team to make it to the round of 8. As we look to get ready for next week. A few little quick updates as we take a look at the bracket. We do have a few teams coming in here. Let's take a quick look, actually, as we Group B, man. It was an exciting group, somewhat predictable. We had a few surprises. Chaos Elite, definitely one of those surprises, actually, and really, really impressed. I have to imagine this is a team that will likely make a decent run here through the elimination bracket. We actually could take a look at real quickly where they'll probably end up as we take a look here to see right down here. You know, they've definitely, I mean, Ardent's not a bad team. It's 6-seed team, but really they played well, but they definitely went into against a team that I think is playing way above their seeding.
They are indeed, and it'll be Chaos Elite versus Team Genesis, I believe, next week, if I remember the brackets correctly, and I also believe they were very closely seeded as well. After seeing Chaos Elite play, it's going to be tough to say which team's going to come out there. You know, both teams looking good today, just not, maybe need to work a little bit on their synergy, I guess, is the biggest thing for these teams. You know, individually, they all looked really well. They just really got to work on the teamwork. And, you know, this is something that Ardent does bring to the table, is these guys have been together for a while now. So excited to see where they're going, but they do have an incredibly difficult team to play next week in Tribe Gaming.
Yeah, no, they do. And then, if you know, the elimination bracket is actually a really stacked bracket. It's going to be actually really hard for a lot of these teams. I'd actually say Team Genesis is going to be probably the easiest matchup for a team like Chaos Elite to work their way through. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. We got a lot of good teams down here. Chubby Bunny, Swishers, Enforcers. Those are a couple of the top 16 teams that have already gotten knocked down. As you know, the elimination round can be very, very brutal. But, ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our stream for this week. You guys have watched Group A and Group B over the last 2 days, duke it out through the first couple of rounds, but now the competition is really going to get intense as we get ready for next week. You guys are not going to want to miss it. We are going to be coming back, although it is July 4th holiday here in the States, so we will not be streaming next Tuesday. Instead, we will be doing a little bit of an offset schedule starting on Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Make sure you guys tune in as we get underway with the last few rounds of Group A and Group B before the playoffs. Again, thanks to my casters tonight, guys. Tasty Bacon Denominator. Make sure you guys thank them and say hi to them in the chat. And thanks everyone for tuning in and watching on our stations, Mob Crush, Twitch, and YouTube. We really appreciate it. We will see you guys next week. Good night.
Ben, Sam, and Ken are on separate journeys to defeat the menacing Vile Dragon. But let's just say luck isn't on their side. If only there was a way for them to find each other and band together. Well, that's why there's Band. It's a mobile app that allows people to come together using common interests. With Band, you can find fellow gamers, chat, schedule gaming sessions, and conduct polls. Stage epic battles with friends while sharing videos and photos along the way. So try Band today. Band. Be together.